The story starts with a boy named Errol sharing a lunch table with his family. His father can't believe how relaxed he looks, admitting he barely slept last night from overthinking what kind of hero class his son might receive. His mother joins in, full of excitement for the big moment, while Errol's younger sister confidently claims her big brother is going to be the star of his entire class. Their mom laughs and adds that with Errol's looks and charm, every girl in town will be chasing after him, sending his sister into a minor panic at the thought of someone snatching him away. But Errol isn't caught up in the hype because deep down, he figures he'll probably end up being just another average kid. In this world, hero classes are divine gifts handed down by a higher power when kids turn 10, giving them access to unique abilities. When the big day arrives, all the kids gather at the church for the blessing ritual, where a priest prepares to start. He places his hand gently on the first boy's forehead, and the kid instantly sees images of flames and hammers, confirming his role as a blacksmith. The then boy races back to his dad, beaming with pride, while the priest moves on through the line. When Errol's turn finally arrives, his sister confidently declares he's destined for something crazy strong. He walks up to the priest, cheered on by his family. Around him, people begin to whisper, jealous of his bloodline, convinced he'll inherit advanced classes just like his famous parents, Farah the Sword Princess and Leon the Archmage. Once close, Errol closes his eyes and tries to concentrate, but no vision appears. The priest looks puzzled and finally announces that Errol is one of the rare cases, a hero with no class at all. Errol's family goes from thrilled to devastated in seconds, acting like they've been conned, and that his life is now completely doomed. The following morning, Errol starts training with a regular sword. His parents reassure him that they're not going to kick him out, but Errol tells them he's totally fine and doesn't want to just sit around mooching, while his sister promises she'll back him up no matter what. Seeing how stressed they are, Errol reminds them that he's been learning swordsmanship from his mother for years, so even without a class, he can still be useful. Though in his mind, he thinks she's a terrible instructor, since every time they spar, she sends him flying across the forest with her crazy strength. After he finishes explaining, his mom tears up with pride, and his dad starts to believe he might actually land a proper job one day. But after watching them all dote on him like he's a saint, Errol gets fed up and heads off to train alone. As Errol steps into the training field, he spots two students with the swordsman class clashing blades in a playful duel. Mid-fight, the two notice Errol watching and call out, asking what someone without a class is even doing in a place like this. Errol responds coolly, saying he's here to train just like them. The boys laugh, explaining they're not training at all, they're just messing around since their class handles most of the work. Then with smug grins, they offer to show him just how much their class has improved their swordplay and jump back into sparring. As Errol observes, he can clearly see how fluid and refined their movements are thanks to their class bonus. Curious, he asks if he can spar with one of them. One of the two scoffs at the request, calling it ridiculous for someone like Errol to challenge a classed swordsman, but Errol stands firm because he doesn't think he needs a class to prove himself. Slightly offended by the confidence, the boy agrees, saying he'll gladly put him in his place. But before they begin, the boy checks if Errol still has his protection blessing, the passive safety barrier granted to everyone at birth, which slowly recharges as long as they avoid damage. Errol confirms it's fine and reassures him that he's not about to die from a spar and tells him to bring it on. Annoyed by his tone, the swordsman rushes forward and swings hard, only to be stunned when Errol effortlessly redirects the strike. A second attack comes, but Errol steps aside and counters with a clean parry. His friend, watching from the side, tells him to stop goofing around and finish it, but the swordsman replies that Errol's no pushover. Blow after blow, they clash in a string of parries, until the boy realizes he's not going to win this alone, so he frustratedly calls out to his partner for backup. The second swordsman charges in from behind, but Errol senses the move and sidesteps it just in time. While watching the two stumble over each other and argue, Errol notes that their class clearly doesn't teach teamwork. Seeing the perfect opening, he goes in for the finish. The moment they look up, Errol disappears from view, then reappears under one of them, landing a clean uppercut that drops him flat. As the other tries to strike back, he ends up tripping over his unconscious partner, giving Errol the perfect shot to take him down too. With both opponents lying flat on the ground, Errol calmly declares his victory. But instead of accepting the loss, they start whining, claiming he jumped them when they weren't ready. And as the two boys start asking Errol for a rematch, he agrees without hesitation. But before they can get into it, a boy standing behind cuts through the tension and warns the duo not to be reckless, reminding them that whining about cheap shots won't save them out on real combat. The red-haired boy then glares at them, calling their behavior shameful and a stain on every swordsman out there. One of the two tries to talk back, but his friend nervously hushes him, clearly aware of the redhead's high standing. The redhead approaches Errol directly and asks if he's really the son of Farah, the infamous sword princess. When Errol nods, the boy compliments his form, saying it's clear he learned some proper blade work from his mother. But then he raises his sword and challenges Errol to a serious duel, He says that those two jokers Errol just beat don't count, they're just rookies. And this time he wants to show Errol what the swordsman class actually looks like in action. Off to the side, the two boys whisper to each other, wondering if he's the son of Evans, the village guard captain. The redhead boy confirms it without hesitation, and Errol recalls that Evans used to work closely with his mom on monster hunts. Looking at the redhead now, Errol thinks it's hard to believe he's Evans' son. He's way too pretty to be related to someone that gruff, so he wonders if the kid's gonna turn into a walking wall of muscles like his dad someday. The boy's voice suddenly shakes as he praises his father, calling him a brilliant swordsman and a wise teacher. But it clearly bugs him that Errol's mother stole the title of strongest warrior in the village. Errol picks up on the jealousy right away, and it's obvious the kid's using this duel to settle a personal grudge he has with Errol's mom. When Errol says it out loud, the redhead looks flustered, but asks if Errol honestly believes the same. And Errol smugly affirms that his mother is the strongest person in the village. The red-haired boy doesn't argue, but instead he insists that he's inherited the finest swordsmanship from his father and plans to prove that the Evans family stands above the rest. After cooling down a bit, he explains that he received his swordsman class a year ago and has been training relentlessly under his father ever since, so he believes all that hard work guarantees his victory. But Errol doesn't back down and calmly replies that he's had plenty of guidance from his own powerhouse of a mother, so he's not planning to lose either. Both of them raise their blades as the duel begins, and the red-haired boy lunges in first. Errol meets the blow with a sharp block and counters immediately, and before long, they're caught in a fast-paced back and forth. Watching them go at it, the two boys from earlier are stunned because Errol's keeping up with someone elite, even though he's got no class backing him. While observing the redhead's swings, Errol admits to himself that this guy's definitely on another level compared to the others, but his strikes are fueled more by frustration than focus. Errol bides his time, waiting for a misstep, and goes in the moment he sees an opening. But just then, the redhead unleashes a twin slice technique, knocking Errol straight into a wall. He's surprised Errol was able to block the first slash, but notices that the second hit landed clean. Finally breaking his calm, Errol demands to know what that move was. The boy explains that it's a special swordsman class skill, one that a classless fighter can't fully block. Still, Errol brushes off the pain, convinced that with enough training, he can learn how to stop it. Hearing his resolve, the redhead can't help but respect him, praising his stubborn resilience. A few mornings later, Errol is snoring away deep into the day, and his sister sneaks in trying to wake him with a kiss. Just before she leans in, Errol jerks awake and knocks her away with a headbutt. She yelps, insulted, and demands a kiss as compensation while Errol walks out of the room to grab breakfast. Their mom greets him with a smile and dishes out the food, and the whole family sits down to eat. His sister asks if he's off to train again, and when he nods, she gets visibly annoyed, telling him to take a break and just let her support him for once. Errol doesn't respond, gets up silently, and heads out. His sister watches him leave, still wondering why he's been training like a man possessed ever since coming home all banged up. Farah gently reassures her daughter, saying that there's something she doesn't know. She leads her outside, opens a wooden chest, and reveals a pile of shattered swords inside, all broken during Errol's recent training sessions. Her daughter stares, stunned, while Farah looks genuinely proud, happy that her son found new motivation after sparring with those boys. The sight makes his sister smile too, but deep down, she still dreams of building a world where people without classes like Errol aren't treated like outcasts. Her mother listens with a warm expression, clearly moved by her daughter's idealistic heart. Somewhere in the woods, Errol slashes away at a target carved into a tree, then takes a few steps back to prepare another strike, and then releases a clean twin slice move, just like the one the redhead used. Landing the hit perfectly, he nods in approval, feeling proud of the progress he's made. While he thinks getting smacked around by the redhead was actually worth it, a goblin creeps through the brush behind him, club in hand. It leaps out to ambush him, but Errol spins around and drops it instantly with another twin slice. Still pleased with how well the skill works, Errol hears a deep roar echo from behind, so Errol gets ready to head back and report the threat to the village guards, but freezes when he hears someone scream in terror. The voice sounds familiar, and realizing he doesn't have time to waste, Errol grabs his sword and sprints into the woods, telling himself he'll be okay. He crouches behind some bushes and peers out, only to see the redhead with his arm covered in blood. Standing over him is a hulking hobgoblin, and Errol starts piecing things together. Just like him, the redhead must have been out here training and took down a few goblins, which probably attracted the big one. As the monster corners the injured boy, Errol quietly moves behind it and lines up the best possible angle. Taking a deep breath, he gets ready to strike, while the redhead mutters under his breath that this is the end. The hobgoblin lifts its club to finish the job, but Errol suddenly charges in and slices it down with a twin slice attack. As the beast hits the dirt, Errol thinks to himself that he's finally nailed the proper stance for the move. The redhead tries to stand but stumbles, falling into Errol's arms. Seeing his condition, Errol notices that his protection blessing has vanished and asks if he has any holy water left. The boy glances at his shattered bottle on the ground in silence, so without a word, Errol pulls out his own bottle and hands it over. After taking a drink, the redhead's wounds begin to heal, but he looks irritated at how far Errol's come. Seeing the boy's strength returning, Errol casually asks if he's feeling better, so the redhead thanks him for the water, then demands to know how Errol pulled off such a powerful technique. Errol coolly replies that it's just a basic twin slice, but the redhead pushes back, saying that people without classes shouldn't be able to learn special abilities like that. Errol replies that he pushed himself way past his limits to make it happen. The redhead looks puzzled, so Errol explains how he broke down the rhythm, timing, and movement until it clicked. Then he smirks and says that his biggest training tool was the redhead himself. Getting pummeled by that skill over and over is exactly how he figured it out. And while the redhead tries to process everything he just heard, Errol casually tells him that he's been honing his twin slice specifically to beat him in their rematch. The redhead, clearly impressed by the dedication, agrees to take him on. Errol double-checks if he's really up for it, but the boy insists because it's the least he can do after getting saved and patched up by him. Errol blinks, surprised he actually understands how to return a favor, and the boy glares back, clearly offended by the implication. Soon, they both draw their swords again and open the match by launching Twin Slice at the same time. The redhead is stunned when Errol blocks both of his strikes and then gets smacked by a follow-up attack. Confused, he demands to know what just happened, so Errol calmly replies that he threw in a third slice. The redhead glares at him and reminds him that it's called Twin Slice for a reason, but Errol shrugs and says that since he didn't inherit his skill from a class, he can tweak it however he wants. He also admits that this was the first time he managed to land that third strike properly, which only frustrates the redhead further. Thinking a class swordsman should never lose to someone like Errol, the redhead challenges him again to prove it. They ready their blades once more, and the redhead, now composed, plans to use his speed advantage to win. When both charge in again with Twin Slice, the redhead keeps his eyes open for that sneaky third strike, but even expecting it isn't enough. The extra hit still breaks through his defense and knocks him flat. Errol holds his sword to the redhead's chest and tells him this outcome was pretty much guaranteed. Grimacing, the redhead asks why the final hit is so quick, so Errol smirks and says he learned it from watching him. He explains that by slowing down the first two strikes just slightly, he loads all his strength into the third, turning it into a surprise finisher. Frustrated and feeling completely outmatched, the redhead clenches his teeth in defeat while Errol walks off, calm and victorious. A few days later, during dinner with his family, Farah casually brings up that Evans' son has headed off to train in Brescia. The name catches Errol off guard, and he asks what Brescia is, so his mother explains that it's the legendary city of swords, and she herself trained at one of its top guilds before getting married. Hearing that, Errol's eyes light up with excitement, already imagining how far he could go if he trains there too, as a classless fighter carving his own path. Half a decade later, a more mature Errol travels by carriage toward the city of Brescia. As they roll through a wooded path, the driver turns back to let the group know they'll be arriving shortly after they crest the next hill. One of the female passengers turns to the others and casually asks if they're all bound for the same destination. A rugged warrior with a barbarian build responds with a frosty tone, prompting her to ask what his issue is. He gestures at her skimpy attire with a scowl, and the woman explains that wearing lighter gear improves performance for someone using twin blades like her. The two swordsmen quickly start arguing, tension rising, while the driver chuckles and comments on how strong advanced classes are supposed to be. Suddenly, the carriage grinds to a halt as a swarm of wild orcs blocks the path ahead. The driver challenges the two fighters to show off their skills, but their boldness vanishes in an instant when the Orc King rises. A terrified noblewoman clings to the barbarian boy's arm, but he shoves her aside and bolts. The girl runs too, and the driver, seeing the chaos, also turns to flee. But Errol steps forward without a word and charges straight into the pack of orcs. He begins slicing through them with clean precision, and the driver spots him using a blink dash technique. Yet as the monsters close in from all sides, the driver figures there's no way Errol makes it out. Then in a blur, Errol spins like a cyclone and cuts down the entire horde. While everyone stares in disbelief, the driver immediately recognizes the move. It's Blade Dance, the iconic ability of the legendary sword princess. He's baffled and wonders how Errol can use that, because it's supposed to be exclusive to female classes. Right in front of him, Errol dodges the Orc King's massive weapon, flips over him midair, and plunges his sword deep into the monster's skull, dropping it instantly. Once it's over, Errol calmly walks back and tells the driver to continue toward Brescia. When he mentions he's heading there to grow stronger, the driver can't believe what he's hearing, saying Errol's already ridiculously powerful. Then an excited young man asks Errol what class he belongs to, and everyone is stunned when he says he doesn't have one at all. We then flash back 5 years earlier, When Errol showed his mom the twin slice technique he'd picked up from the red-haired swordswoman, she thought she was dreaming, but Errol explained that he'd been learning combat skills even without a class. Then he asked her to teach him the sword princess techniques before heading off to train in Brescia, and his mother gets overwhelmed with pride and immediately starts bragging to everyone in the family about her son's impossible talent. Errol's dream comes to an abrupt stop when the carriage driver shakes him awake, announcing their arrival in Brescia. As Errol steps out, he notices swordsmen all around, many of them wielding the aura of seasoned veterans. Curious, he asks the driver about his class, but the man plays it off, claiming he's just a regular man. Errol doesn't buy it, pointing out how accurately the driver recognized his sword abilities, so clearly he's got skills. Cornered, the man admits he's actually a high-ranking holy knight. Errol then asks why someone like him is choffering carriages, and the driver explains that whenever he grows weary of battle, he takes a break from combat by doing something simple, like driving passengers around. Errol nods, appreciating the idea of taking time off from constant training. The driver then recommends that he join a sword guild as a starting point. He tells Errol that Brescia hosts frequent sword tournaments where he can earn some solid prize money, but guild membership is a requirement, so Errol agrees with the suggestion, feeling eager to test himself against elite fighters. The driver also cautions him that there are some sketchy guilds around, so he should choose wisely. Once they part ways, Errol turns toward the heart of the city. He spots a recruitment booth for the Cavaliers Guild, which only accepts knight-type classes, and another called Sword Road, which appears open to everyone holding a sword. Out of nowhere, a girl rushes up and lunges to hug him, but faceplants hard when Errol effortlessly steps aside without even looking. Shocked, she wonders how he dodged her so easily and figures he must have exceptional perception. Errol's a bit lost, unsure who she is, when she immediately asks if he's looking to join a guild. He nods and she launches into an enthusiastic pitch for her brand new guild. She even pulls out a contract for him to sign, but he silently walks off. She grabs his belt to stop him and demands to know why he's leaving. Errol tells her she looks way too damn desperate, and assumes her guild must be weak as hell if they're begging for members. She pretends they're part of a famous elite guild, but Errol isn't falling for it and brushes her off. She quickly introduces herself as Lilia, and, in a last-ditch effort, promises to go on a date with him if he joins. Errol flatly tells her he's not interested, leaving her stunned. He walks off thinking she reminds him of his little sister, cocky attitude, flat as a board. Errol then asks Lilia which guild is considered the most powerful in Brescia, and she instantly fumes at his lack of respect. After taking a deep breath to compose herself, she tells him that the top guild is Black Blade, known for having 8 A-rank swordsmen. She gives him directions to their massive base, and Errol makes his way over. At the entrance, a guard steps forward and asks his business. Errol replies that he wants to join, and the guard directs him toward the application area. Errol heads that way and waits in line for registration. When it's finally his turn, the receptionist informs him that the guild only accepts applicants with advanced combat classes. Errol responds that he doesn't have a class, and the receptionist bursts into laughter before bluntly telling him to leave. The people standing nearby start murmuring about him. Errol tries to ask if he can at least take the entrance test, stating he's confident in his strength, but the receptionist refuses, insisting the rules can't be bent. Just then, several A-rank swordsmen walk in, lighting up the room, but Errol decides not to waste his time and walks out. He tries approaching other guilds throughout the city, but none of them are willing to give him a shot. All turn him away without hesitation. By the end of the day, Errol feels defeated, but then he recalls that his mother once gave him a recommendation letter to help him get into her former guild. At the time, he figured she was just being overly cautious, but now he understands that she knew the kind of rejection he'd face. As Errol makes up his mind to head to her old guild, Lilia suddenly shows up again, but he brushes past her without saying a word. While he walks through the streets, she chases after him, pleading for him to join and help her revive her guild. Errol keeps saying no, so Lilia takes things up a notch and offers to lick his boots if that's what it takes. But Errol walks off, leaving her behind as stunned onlookers stare in silence. Even so, Lilia shouts that she won't give up on him. Eventually, Errol locates the guild's address, but Lilia catches up once more. She insists he's welcome to sign up and points to the huge building nearby. Errol is confused why a guild that big seems so unimpressive, and Lilia admits they've lost most of their old prestige. Still, she's determined to bring back the glory of the Dragon Fang Guild, the one that was once led by the legendary Dual Swords King. Hearing that name jogs Errol's memory, reminding him that his mother was once a part of that same guild in her younger days. That's when he finally agrees to take a look, so Lilia leads him inside and guides him to an open seat. Out of nowhere, Lilia's drunken father stumbles up from the couch and she instantly snaps at him. She reminds him that the doctor strictly forbade him from drinking, and besides, they don't even have money to waste on booze. But her father waves her off, clearly doesn't give a shit, and Errol suddenly realizes this man is none other than the Dual Swords King. As he spots the missing arm, The man looks at Errol and bluntly tells him to walk away because this guild's going down anyway. Lilia tries to stop him from leaving, but he ignores her completely and heads out the door. She turns to Errol, explaining that her father used to be one of Brescia's top-ranked fighters, but his career was ruined when he lost his arm. She figures there's no way Errol would stick around after seeing all this, but to her surprise, he says he's joining. Lilia thinks she's hallucinating, but Errol explains that none of the other guilds would accept him either way. She lights up and quickly pulls out a membership contract, and Errol takes a seat to sign. When he hands it back, Lilia finally notices something odd. Errol's class field is blank. Thinking it's some kind of joke, she glares at him. But Errol shows her his official certification. She examines it closely, then calmly stands up, draws her sword, and threatens to give him the deceased class herself if he doesn't get out of her guild right now. Errol asks why she's reacting like this, and Lilia shouts that she needs real swordsmen on her team. Remembering how Errol embarrassed her earlier, Lilia fumes furiously that she got humiliated by someone with no class at all. That's when a woman named Reiner walks into the room, and Lilia immediately throws herself into her arms, whining that some fraud without a class tried to trick her. But Reiner freezes, and she recognizes Errol right away. Errol's confused and asks how she knows him. Reiner smiles and says they're actually from the same village. She reminds him they used to spar when they were kids, but Errol still draws a blank. Then she says they crossed paths again 5 years ago, and Errol replies that he would remembered someone as gorgeous as her. Reiner's face goes red as a pepper, and that's when Errol finally remembers fighting a red-haired boy. Reiner laughs and reveals she's the daughter and only child of Captain Evans. Errol apologizes for not recognizing her sooner, and Reiner says it's fine, guessing her long hair probably threw him off, thinking to himself that it wasn't her hair that changed, while his eyes drift toward her big melon. Just then Lilia turns to Reiner and asks if this is the same classless kid who beat her. When Reiner nods, Lilia is stunned to realize it was him. Reiner, still a little sore about the past, says she's way stronger now and challenges Errol to a rematch, just like old times. The girls then escort Errol to the guild's training grounds, where Lilia can't believe Reiner is serious about dueling a guy with no class. But Reiner insists that Errol's strength is real, and she's determined to prove she can surpass him. Once they step into the arena, Lilia takes the role of referee and announces the start of the match. Reiner opens with a twin-blade strike, and Errol assumes he can block it easily. But to his surprise, her attack slices clean through his attack and lands a hit on his body. Confused, Errol wonders how she managed to break his attack. Reiner lowers her massive sword and explains that it's 5 times heavier than a normal blade, meaning he can't parry it using the same move. She adds that her brute swordsman class multiplies her attack power, leaving Errol shocked as he braces himself for the next strike. He compliments her growth while defending against her relentless flurry of blows. Realizing he can't keep clashing head-on, Errol retreats a few steps, admitting that he'll lose if he keeps this up. He's puzzled why Reiner's revealing all her advantages mid-fight, but she says it's worth it if it helps her finally beat him. Errol warns her that her speed won't be enough to land a hit, and she charges forward to prove him wrong. She knocks aside his sword and slashes at him, only to strike through an afterimage. Before she can react, Errol appears behind her and taps the side of her neck with his blade. Shocked, Reiner demands to know how he dodged her attack, and Errol casually reminds her that what she hit was just a shadow. Her eyes widen as shadow is a technique reserved for supreme swordsmen. Determined, Reiner launches another assault, but Errol effortlessly slips past every swing, telling her the move isn't as mysterious as it sounds. It's just about moving fast enough. Reiner feels insulted by how casually he downplays it, but Errol adds that it took him a lot of work to reach that level. In an instant he disappears again and lands another precise strike, only to notice his attacks bouncing off a glowing barrier. Reiner smirks and explains that power-type swordsmen gain enhanced defense along with their strength. She goes for another strike, but Errol dodges and counters with a perfectly timed blow. As he mentions that the counter move is something his mother taught him, Reiner was already on the ground in defeat. As the duel ends, Lilia stands frozen in disbelief before announcing Errol as the winner. Reiner feels crushed, frustrated that she still lost even after training so hard, while Errol compliments her technique and progress. Yet he adds bluntly that he's simply stronger, which makes Reiner's eyes well up. Lilia rushes over to console her, furious that Errol made her cry. He looks baffled, insisting he was being nice, but Reiner pretends she wasn't crying and storms back toward the guild. Once inside, both Errol and Lilia can hear her crying and shouting that she still lost, even after dedicating 5 long years to improving herself. After that, Lilia officially welcomes Errol as a new member of the guild. He notices how her attitude has completely flipped, though she pretends she believed in him all along. Remembering how aggressive she was before, Errol lets it slide and asks why the guild is falling apart. Lilia hesitates for a moment before admitting that they're deep in debt. When he asks how much, she motions for him to lean closer and quietly whispers the number in his ear, but she adds that they can clear all of it if they win the upcoming tournament. Lilia then explains that the event requires 3 participants, and Errol wonders aloud why Rainer is still staying with them despite their rundown state. Lilia tells him that when Rainer first arrived in Brescia, every major guild turned her down. Her father, however, saw her potential and welcomed her into Dragon Fang without hesitation. Errol nods, realizing that Rainer stayed out of loyalty to repay that kindness. Then he confidently assures Lilia that they'll erase the debt easily once they win the tournament. But Lilia looks uneasy, pointing out that the opposing guilds can field up to 5 fighters while they only have 3. Even so, while Lilia worries about the odds, Errol feels nothing but excitement. The thought of stronger rivals fills him with anticipation, and he declares that facing powerful enemies is exactly why he came to Brescia in the first place. Watching quietly from the sidelines, the guild master observes everything, smiling to himself as he recognizes the tremendous potential within Errol. The next morning, Errol opens his eyes to find himself in a room he doesn't recognize, until it clicks that he's living at the Dragon Fang Guild now. After getting ready, he heads out and joins Lilia and Rainer at the table. Lilia flashes him a cheerful smile and asks if he slept well. Errol nods, saying that it's been far too long since he's slept in an actual bed. Noticing how quiet Rainer is, Errol wonders if she's still bothered by losing yesterday's match. But before he can think too long, Lilia breaks the silence, excitedly announcing that they're officially registered for the guild tournament. Beaming with pride, she says Dragon Fang is registered and ready to fight. Errol curiously asks if the prize money is enough to wipe out their debt. Lilia confirms it is and begins explaining the rules of the tournament, revealing that victory requires eliminating every opposing guild member. Rainer seems anxious, concerned that their small team will struggle against larger, tougher squads. But Lilia remains upbeat, pointing out that the chances of running into high-level A-ranked fighters are slim, and they got 2 solid B-rankers on their side. Errol looks puzzled at the mention of ranks, so Rainer scoffs at him for being clueless, and Lilia breaks it down, saying that swordsmen are ranked from D up to A, based on overall combat power. She also mentions that only 20 people in all of Brescia hold the A rank, and that both she and Rainer are classified as B rank. And even though Errol beat Rainer, Lilia doesn't believe he's A rank, since the jump in strength between B and A is massive. All of a sudden, she remembers the matchups for the tournament are about to be revealed, and she rushes off to check. As Lilia heads out, Rainer stands up too, and Errol asks where she's going. When she says she's heading out to train, Errol confirms she's a power bladesman and asks if she has any other abilities tied to that class. She tells him about a skill called Guts, which boosts her defense barrier significantly. Eager to learn it, Errol stands up and grabs Rainer's hands. Rainer blushes, thinking he's about to flirt, but then he calmly asks her to beat him up using her sheathed blade. Errol tells her this will bring them closer, but Rainer gets flustered and says she's not into that freaking kind of relationship. Errol quickly explains that he's not trying to be weird, he just wants to understand how her Guts skill works. Since the ability strengthens a person's resilience under pressure, he figures the fastest way to learn it is by letting her hit him over and over again. Rainer then reminds Errol that divine blessings can't simply be copied, and that her abilities were granted, not taught. But Errol brings up how he was able to learn both Twin Slice and Shadow, leaving her momentarily speechless. Without saying more, she leads him to the training field, where Errol asks to borrow her heavy sword. Rainer doubts he can even lift it, but her eyes widen in shock as he effortlessly draws it. Errol calmly tells her that it's thanks to the endless hours of training he's poured in, and he's confident he can master the Guts ability too. That's when Rainer finally acknowledges his determination. She agrees to help him learn, warning that she won't be holding back. Errol feels genuinely lucky to have such a powerful ally from his hometown. Blushing from his words, Rainer raises her blade, and their special training begins. Not long after, Lilia comes bursting in, completely panicked over the tournament matchups. She's in tears when she announces that their very first opponent is Black Blade, the most elite guild in all of Brescia. Knowing that their captain Jorg is a total monster with no sense of mercy, Lilia fears he'll show no restraint in crushing them. Still, she decides they'll face fate head-on and give it their all. Then when Lilia finally notices Rainer hammering down on Errol, she assumes they're having a falling out. Rainer explains it's just intense training, but Lilia remains convinced Rainer is venting her anger on him. Covered in bruises, Errol staggers up and complains that he's starving, but Lilia tells him to drink some holy water first to recover. As the days pass, the tournament day finally arrives. Errol is blown away by the enormous coliseum and the roaring crowd filling the seats. He then overhears some spectators chatting nearby, and they're excited to see 2 big guilds clash. But their money's on Black Blade, since nobody expects anything from the rundown Dragon Fang. Lilia grits her teeth, ready to snap, but Rainer stops her before she can cause a scene. Errol is surprised there's gambling going on, and Lilia suddenly grins darkly as she sees their odds are set at 20-1. Errol seems impressed by the number, but Lilia reminds him that it just means everyone expects them to get destroyed. Still, she thinks the outrageous odds are the perfect chance to make some quick money, if they pull off a miracle and win. Knowing full well they're doomed if they lose anyway, Lilia confesses she went all in. She mortgaged her home and bet every last coin they had on Dragon Fang. Rainer nervously points out that they're more likely to lose, but Lilia shrugs, saying it's not like things can get any worse. Out of nowhere, Jorg approaches and commends Lilia for defending her father's guild with such fire. He casually asks about the mysterious classless fighter she brought in, and Lilia immediately suspects he's being sarcastic. With a fake tone of concern, Jorg says it saddens him to see his old rival guild in decline. Then with a smirk, he claims he personally arranged their matchup because the crowd would love a battle between the former strongest and the current strongest guild. He even says he did her a favor, letting her profit off the betting odds. But Jorg can't hold back his laugh, knowing there's no way she'll defeat the elite team he personally handpicked. When Lilia firmly declares they'll win anyway, Jorg walks off, leaving her boiling with rage. Errol watches quietly, seeing right through Jorg's manipulative charm and empty compliments. Later, as the match time approaches, the announcer hypes up the event, and the audience explodes with excitement. Errol observes that Jorg himself won't be participating and wonders if the guild master is showing mercy. Lilia quickly shuts that down, reminding him that Jorg's members are all A-rankers, and Rainer agrees that they're definitely not pulling any punches. But that only makes Errol more eager to face off against high-level swordsmen. Shortly, the announcer announces the first fight, Black Blade's Geo versus Dragon Fang's classless Errol. As Errol enters the battlefield, whispers ripple through the audience. People scoff, wondering why Dragon Fang would send someone with no class to be publicly embarrassed. Even Geo sighs and thinks that this fight is going to be a complete waste of time. As the match begins, Geo immediately teleports forward and stabs Errol with his sword. Lilia gasps in panic, but Rainer calmly says it's just a shadow clone. As the false image vanishes, Geo's confident smile begins to fade. He spins and thrusts again at the figure behind him, only for that one to dissolve as well. That's when he realizes there are now 2 more Errols standing across the arena. Thinking he can finish them all in one move, Geo charges up a blink dash and strikes, only to be caught off guard by a third version behind him. The 3 shadows all lunge at once, and Geo manages to destroy them, but it's too late. The real Errol emerges from beneath him and lands a clean hit, dropping Geo in a single blow. Crumpled on the ground, Geo struggles to understand how Errol summoned 3 illusions at once, but Errol casually explains that his mother can create 5 shadows without breaking a sweat. With the match over, the announcer calls Errol the winner, and the crowd erupts into cheers. Lilia jumps up, celebrating, while Rainer stares in disbelief that Errol just crushed an A-rank swordsman like it was nothing. As the medics carry Geo off the field, Errol reflects on how clean Geo's critical attack was and thinks that he still has a long way to go before he can replicate this skill. At the same time, the audience is left stunned, unable to believe that someone without a class could outperform an elite swordsman. As Jorg watches from a distance, silently clenching his jaw, the next round begins. Black Blade's second fighter lunges forward, slashing at Errol, but he deflects each strike with ease. Without hesitation, Errol counters with a flawless twin slice, cutting his opponent down and securing another swift win. In the following bout, Errol faces an agile fighter wielding a dagger for close-range combat, but before the man can react, Errol vanishes like a phantom and reappears behind him, knocking him out cold. Even Rainer and Lilia are caught off guard because he's just scored 3 victories in a row. Rainer turns to Lilia and asks why she isn't stepping in to fight yet. Lilia, knowing full well she'd stand no chance, decides to focus on cheering instead. She gets Rainer to join in, and they both watch as Errol takes on his next challenger, a heavily armored shield user. Errol dodges every strike with precision while his opponent glares, accusing him of lying about being classless. Errol compliments the man's techniques, saying he'll need to wear him down over time since breaking through his defenses head-on isn't an option. But the shield bearer scoffs, insisting someone with no class shouldn't even be able to fight him at all. Errol responds that everything he has came through relentless effort. The shield fighter dismisses that, saying effort alone can't compete with the power granted by classes. He then fakes a sword swing and rushes in with a shield bash instead, but Errol sees right through it and counters mid-move using his newly learned foresight ability. The parry knocks the shield out of the man's grasp, stunning him. He wonders if Errol picked up the technique by watching his previous opponent. Errol admits to himself that he's still a long way from mastering it, but he's gotten good enough to replicate it mid-fight. Then Errol nails him with another counter kick, impressing even his foe with how quickly he learns. Then Errol calmly walks over to the fallen shield and picks it up. Infuriated, the swordsman charges at him in rage, but Errol casually dodges and finishes him off using the exact same shield counter against him. With that, the announcer declares Errol's 4th straight win, and the crowd starts whispering in disbelief and questions if he is really classless. So the tournament officials step in and demand proof. Errol agrees without hesitation, handing over his class card. The announcer places it into the verification crystal, and the entire stadium goes silent as the orb confirms its authenticity. Now even Jorg begins to feel the sting of defeat creeping in. Even Rainer starts believing they might actually win this thing. Lilia, however, is fuming because if she had known Errol was this strong, she would have sold her family heirlooms to bet even more on their victory. Rainer admits she never expected him to grow this powerful, and starts wondering how exactly Errol trained over the last 5 years to become the fighter standing before them now. At the same time, Lilia is already daydreaming about marrying Errol, convinced that even if the guild collapses, she could rebuild it easily as long as he's with her. While she quietly plots her romantic strategy, Errol can't help but sense a sinister aura radiating from her and feels uneasy. Soon after, the announcer introduces Black Blade's final competitor, Master Masamune. Errol immediately notices that he's wielding a katana, and Rainer quickly identifies him as a rare samurai-class swordsman. Since Masamune has never fought publicly before, Lilia assumes he's Black Blade's secret trump card for the tournament. As the match begins, Masamune stands motionless, hand resting lightly on his sword, his calm composure alone radiating danger, and Errol feels the pressure building in the air. Seeing his hesitation, Masamune smiles faintly and says he's only waiting for Errol to step closer so he can unleash his ultimate move. Errol smirks back and begins to approach, surprising Masamune, saying they can't just stand around forever, and he wants to see the swordsman's strongest technique for himself. Masamune chuckles softly, warning that if he uses his final strike, Errol won't even see it happen. But Errol, confident in his own speed, keeps moving forward. He notes that Masamune's blade is still sheathed and guesses that he'll release everything in a single decisive draw. Errol considers using his shadow technique, but decides it's pointless because Masamune's focus is too sharp for illusions. He stops right before him, realizing that this battle will be decided in one strike. Both stand perfectly still, holding their breath. Then as Errol takes one final step, Masamune moves and his blade flashes like lightning. But in that instant, Errol vanishes. Masamune's eyes widen because Errol didn't dodge with an illusion. He vanished with his real body. Behind him, Errol's voice calmly praises Masamune's incredible speed, but says the person who trained him was far faster. Then Errol unleashes Piercing Tempest, the Sword Princess's signature finisher, striking Masamune with a storm of slashes that sends him crashing to the ground. Rainer and Lilia freeze in shock, recognizing the legendary Sword Princess technique, while the crowd erupts in disbelief. The announcer declares the result, and chaos breaks out in the stands as gamblers scream in frustration at the Black Blade team for blowing all their bets. Rainer and Lilia cheer wildly, celebrating their hard-earned victory. When Errol returns to them, Lilia tries to leap into his arms, but he instinctively sidesteps and she crashes to the floor. He apologizes, saying it was just a habit he developed dodging his younger sister's surprise hugs. Lilia immediately cheers up when she remembers the massive payout they'll get, while Errol turns to see Rainer standing nearby with her arms out, waiting for a hug. Realizing what she's doing, Rainer blushes furiously and drops her hands, but Errol tells her that he wouldn't mind hugging her, as long as she's not wearing armor. Lilia immediately volunteers to take her place, but Errol dodges her again, letting her fall face first once more. Watching from afar, Jorg grits his teeth, seething with rage as he silently vows to make them pay for this defeat. Later that evening, once they got back to the guild house, the place turned into a full-blown party with drinks flying in every direction. Errol still couldn't believe Lilia was even allowed to touch alcohol, but she made it clear she was a grown woman, even if she still looked like a kid fresh out of class. What really messed with her head was how Errol went toe-to-toe with 5 elite swordsmen from the top guild in the entire country and came out untouched. To her, this was her golden opportunity, and if she played things right, she could ride his rise straight out of obscurity. She didn't waste time and went straight for it, asking him to marry her and claiming she could give him anything he desired. But Errol, being the cold-blooded lone wolf that he is, shut her down immediately and said he'd rather go with someone like Rainer instead. That hit Rainer like a truck, making her face light up red as she jumped from her seat, snapping at Errol to quit saying dumb shit just to dodge Lilia. But Errol was dead serious and asked what made her think he was joking, and she fired back when they were kids, he called her a dude during a sparring match. She said everyone who met her said she lacked any kind of feminine appeal, but Errol could clearly spot 2 legendary assets in front of him, and didn't seem to agree. Lilia quickly picked up on the fact that Rainer had no clue how to play her own damn hand, so she figured she didn't have much competition. Sliding in closer, she started caressing Errol's thighs, saying he must be sore after all the fighting earlier, and whispered that he should stop by her room later. Rainer immediately panicked and told her to stop being so damn creepy. But Lilia just smirked, saying all she planned to do was give him a proper massage to help him unwind after such a rough day. To her surprise, Errol replied that he'd much rather get one from Rainer instead. But his idea of a massage was basically getting his ass handed to him by Rainer at the training yard, while he pushed himself to learn the same reinforcement magic she used with ease thanks to her skill set and class perks. Lilia stood up on the balcony watching the chaos, wondering if Errol even knew what a real massage was supposed to feel like. The non-stop clanging and yelling finally woke up Lilia's dad, who staggered out of the house, totally wrecked from drinking, groaning about the racket, and grumbling that there was no need to take out their pre-tournament stress in the middle of the damn night. But Lilia tells him straight up that they actually won the match, and not against just anybody, but against the current strongest guild out there. That instantly catches his ear, though in his head he figures Black Blade must have thrown in some rank B or C newbies just to get wiped. Then Lilia drops a bigger surprise, saying every single one of them was A tier. And not only that, but Errol took them all down on his own without backup. That snaps her dad of his booze haze as he stares at Errol, all bruised and busted up, trying to figure out if this kid is really the real deal. Lilia adds she made a stack of bets, and since Errol wiped the floor with the enemy team, she hit the big time. Now they're not just out of debt, they got more than enough to keep the guild running. Her father stays skeptical, saying that if the kid really is that strong, then it's just a matter of time before some bigger and richer guild comes to scoop him up, so she better not get too comfortable. But Lilia fires back that there's nothing to worry about, since she's planning to marry Errol anyway, and once that happens, he's locked in for life. Errol shuts that idea down right away, then shifts his focus to her dad. He says Lilia might be a stubborn little pain, but at least she's not some quitter who bailed on everything. That was a clear shot at her dad, who glares at him with warning in his eyes. But Errol just keeps going, telling him to stop sulking and start acting like someone his age, especially since he still has one working hand, and could damn well use it to swing a blade. That sets him off, and he grabs Errol by the collar on the spot and tells him to stop talking about things he clearly doesn't understand. He says a dual-wielding swordsman who can't dual-wield anymore is just a waste of space. Errol doesn't back down and says he disagrees, since he's a classless fighter still pushing forward and trying to make something out of nothing. Her dad shoves him back and walks away without saying another word, heading upstairs. Lilia and Reiner rush over to Errol, checking if he's alright. Lilia apologizes for what her dad did and thanks Errol for speaking up. Errol says even with one arm gone and years of doing nothing, her dad is still insanely strong, and it's a shame all that strength and experience is going to waste. He starts thinking about all the cool skills he could pick up from a guy like that and makes a promise to himself to get Rod to grab that sword again. Lilia hears him talking about learning and casually brings up the dungeons under the city as a good place to start. Errol doesn't have the slightest clue what a dungeon is, so Reiner steps in and explains that dungeons are underground caverns crawling with monsters, usually spawning in the hundreds, and packed with deadly traps. It's one of the best spots to rack up combat experience, sharpen new techniques, and level up fast, especially with the Sword God Cup coming up. Aurel clearly has no idea what she's on about, so she breaks it down further. Every year, the city throws a massive tournament where the top swordsmen from across the country show up to prove who really sits at the top. Without wasting time, Lilia whips out a registration form and tells Errol to fill it if he wants in. But right in front of her, to Reiner's total shock, he tears it clean in half. Reiner looks stunned and asks if he's seriously skipping the contest, but Errol says Lilia tried to slip one past him and had handed him a damn marriage certificate instead. Lilia laughs it off, saying she was just messing around and wanted to see how far she could push it. But Errol's had enough of playing nice, and he grabs her from behind and locks her in a rear naked choke just to teach her a lesson. By the time morning rolls in, Errol wakes up with Lilia trying to launch some kind of sweet ambush, but he reacts fast, dodges her, and ties her to the bed before heading out like nothing happened. Later that same day, the whole crew heads toward the dungeon grounds, where Lilia starts explaining the basics. Every adventurer stands on a teleportation circle, which lets them jump to a dungeon floor they've already been to, and you can't skip ahead to new levels unless you've physically been there before. Lilia brags she's made it to level 12, while Reiner has hit floor 14. Errol decides on the spot to head straight to the 14th floor with Reiner, but Lilia cuts in and says it doesn't work that way. Unless he's been to a level himself, the circle won't let him teleport there. That was a letdown since Errol wanted to jump into the deep end and fight the strongest monsters right away. Lilia tells him to chill, saying she knows a shortcut that can take them down to the lower floors pretty fast. Everyone agrees to the plan, but Lilia tries to peel Errol off from the group, saying Reiner can continue her own floor 14 run and that Errol doesn't need two guides. She grabs his arm and starts pulling him aside, but Errol's not that easy to trick. He shuts her down and tells Reiner to come with them anyway. They step onto the first floor and get ambushed right away by two armored knights. Errol draws his blade and locks into combat with one of them, while Reiner handles the second. He quickly notices that even with their bulky gear, the knights move with surprising speed, though it's still manageable. Using a quick burst of movement, he dashes in and slices through the knight's neck. But instead of falling, the armor keeps moving, revealing that it's completely hollow and being powered by the dungeon's own mana. Even headless, the thing doesn't stop. Reiner mentions that they don't feel pain and have no clear weak spot, so Errol switches tactics and goes for the legs, and the moment he strikes, the knight collapses to the floor. Reiner finishes her fight too and warns that these enemies will regenerate, so they should keep moving. Before pushing forward, Errol asks Lilia what her class is. She proudly says she's a fencer and offers to teach him anything he wants, whether it's in the training arena or in bed. But Errol turns her down again and walks off without saying more. Just before they reach the second floor, they hear a voice crying for help behind a nearby door. As they approach, they find a man drenched in blood, kneeling on the floor and begging them to save him. Reiner suggests taking him to the surface, but he refuses, claiming his teammates are still trapped inside after triggering a trap. He pleads for their help, and Lilia instantly asks how much he's offering. To her surprise, he actually hands over a decent amount of cash from his gambling winnings. Still, something about the guy doesn't sit right with Errol. Walking behind him, Errol watches closely. From his own experience, anyone bleeding that badly wouldn't even be able to sit up without holy water, let alone walk all the way back here. He realizes the blood and wounds are completely fake, but he keeps it to himself, thinking this might turn into something more entertaining. The man leads them into a hidden chamber where they spot a long trail of blood and a small puddle in the center, with a single gold coin placed neatly in the middle. Lilia's eyes light up the second she sees the coin. As she reaches for it, a teleportation circle activates beneath their feet. Reiner catches on that they've walked straight into a trap, while the man smirks and admits he got paid well to set it up. What he didn't expect was for the magic circle to drag him along too. They all reappear on a floor none of them recognize, not even Reiner, which means it's deeper than the 14th level. But so far no enemies have shown up. The man who faked his injuries was now trembling uncontrollably, his voice cracking as he muttered that they'd somehow stumbled onto the dungeon's final floor, the one said to house the advanced sword god. Right then, a knight clad in rainbow-colored enchanted armor appeared before them. Lilia wasn't buying any of it, brushing off the whole sword god class as a dumb legend. Errol, on the other hand, instantly recognized how bad the situation was. He shoved Lilia to the ground just as the sword god unleashed a high-speed slash that tore straight through the dungeon walls. The moment the dust settled, the sword god charged directly at Errol. He barely managed to lift his sword in time to block the hit, and even then, the force slammed him into the wall. Still, he realized he only survived it thanks to the reinforcement training Reiner had drilled into him. He went on the counterattack immediately, swinging at the knight, but his opponent was insanely fast and danced backward with expert-level footwork. That made Errol grin, saying this was the perfect time to test his limits. His party was stunned as he stepped in again, using the same divine step technique, launching a flurry of strikes that the knight caught and blocked one by one. The pressure pushed the knight back, but he suddenly activated a skill that spiked the gravity in the room, pinning everyone else to the floor. But Errol stayed on his feet with ease because he'd already gone through this kind of pressure back when he was a kid. His mom used to train him under the same conditions, where standing alone took everything he had. When she came at him back then, he was completely helpless. But now things had changed. He pulled out the gold coin and used it to cancel the effect, opening a small window in the knight's defenses. Errol didn't waste it, and he tapped into one of his strongest moves, a technique called Infinite Break. The impact shattered the knight's body completely, leaving the others in stunned silence. He then took a sip of holy water to recover his strength, and then the entire group exited the dungeon safely through the teleportation portal. Back at the tavern, Rod was once again drowning himself in booze when he overheard three loudmouth punks bragging about how they lured the new recruits from the Dragon Fang Guild straight into a trap, proudly saying those poor bastards probably weren't coming back. Rod stood up, walked over, and shattered their table with a single punch. He demanded they spill everything they knew, but before they could answer, Jorg stepped in and called him a useless drunk. Rod instantly put the pieces together. If Jorg was involved, then Lilia's odds of making it out alive were practically zero. Crushed by the thought, he lunged at Jorg in a rage, only to get tossed aside like garbage. He hit the ground hard, stuck there on his knees, wishing there was something he could do to save his little girl. But then a voice by the door pulled his attention. He turned around and saw Lilia walking in with Errol and Reiner, casually talking about how hungry they were. Lilia quickly spotted her father and that smug bastard Jorg, but she was caught off guard when Rod pulled her into a tight hug and quietly thanked whatever was up there that she was still alive. Reiner stepped forward and called Jorg out on the spot, saying they got everything from his lackey, who confessed the whole thing was his doing. Jorg, like any sleazy politician, denied everything without hesitation and claimed that anyone who enters the dungeon is responsible for their own damn safety. And Errol couldn't exactly argue with that. Rod warned Jorg that he wasn't going to walk away from this clean. Jorg brushed him off again, called him a washed-up drunk who should have stayed in the gutter, and left without a care. Errol just stood there wondering what kind of garbage he'd have to deal with next. A few days pass, and Lilia receives a scroll listing the complete lineup for the tournament's preliminary brackets. Much to her disappointment, she finds out that she's been placed in the same bracket as Errol, a discovery that instantly crushes her hopes, since it means her chances of winning the prelims and representing her guild in the main tournament are now almost non-existent. Errol, slightly puzzled by how the preliminaries work, is quickly brought up to speed by Rainer, who explains that the Sword God tournament draws such an overwhelming number of participants that it's impossible to include everyone in the main bracket. As a solution, the city runs a preliminary round where participants are sorted into random brackets based on a dice roll. It's entirely luck-based who ends up facing whom, and the winner of each bracket earns direct entry into the official tournament. Looking over the scroll Rainer is holding, Errol notices that she's actually placed in a different group than Lilia. She quietly breathes a sigh of relief and offers a silent prayer of thanks, knowing she wouldn't stand a chance against him if they had been matched. She then starts praying again, this time for a smooth path through her prelims. When Errol jokingly teases her about having unresolved daddy issues, Lilia cuts in, saying it's time to return to the dungeons for more training. Errol, on the other hand, seems completely fed up with dungeon crawling and just wants to bail. Lilia tries to play the charm card, insisting that she needs a strong man to protect her if anything goes sideways. Rainer, watching this unfold, makes a mental note of how helpless she sounds and quietly vows to give her a lesson or two about standing on her own. Just then, before anyone can leave, Rod enters the room with exaggerated concern, pulling his daughter into an embrace and reminding her to be extra cautious, just in case Jorg decides to make another move. Lilia sees the fear in her father's expression and promises to be careful before heading out. As Rod turns around, he finds Errol silently watching him with a judging stare. Rod defends himself, saying there's still time for him to get his act together and be a better father. Errol simply smiles and responds that it's never too late to be a decent person, then walks off. 2 weeks later, the day of the preliminaries finally arrives. The matches kick off as crowds roar from the sidelines, cheering on the fighters as blades clash and sparks fly. Bit by bit, the ranks begin to thin as combatants are knocked out, and Lilia unfortunately ends up losing her match, without even making it far enough to face Errol. Lilia then sulks quietly in the corner, brooding over the outcome and clearly disappointed, as she had at least hoped to make it to the finals this time. But Errol shows no sympathy for her frustration, casually remarking that all her concern about being in the same bracket as him was pointless because she would have lost either way. His bluntness only deepens Lilia's gloom, but she quickly gathers herself and warns him to stay alert, even with his strength, since the other finalist in their group has a few tricks that might catch him off guard. Errol, on the other hand, doesn't seem remotely concerned and remarks that he's already encountered nearly every kind of technique during his battles inside the dungeons, so it's unlikely this opponent would catch him off guard. Still, Lilia remains unconvinced and explains that the red-haired swordswoman is actually a magic swordsman, someone who can channel spells through her sword, enhancing it with mana and added force. That detail catches Errol's attention, as he hadn't expected the tournament, centered on pure swordsmanship, to allow the use of magic. But Lilia clarifies that it doesn't matter what class you belong to. As long as you're affiliated with a guild, you're qualified to compete in the tournament. Just then, the announcer calls for Errol to take the stage, and Lilia wishes him good luck. He makes his way into the arena and comes face to face with the red-haired girl, who bluntly declares that she's a magic swordsman, and that her class is fully recognized in the tournament. She adds that she doesn't want to hear any whining about the match being unfair just because she uses magic. Errol calmly responds that he has no complaints. Whoever fights best deserves the win. With that, the announcer signals the start of the match, and the red-haired swordswoman immediately launches a series of fireballs at him. Errol moves with precision, dodging each blast like he's in a scene from The Matrix, deflecting a few and slicing through others mid-air. She continues the relentless assault, her mana seemingly endless, but Errol maneuvers through the barrage and manages to close the distance between them. He strikes with intent, aiming to end it quickly, but she blocks just in time and counters with another fireball, forcing him to retreat. As the duel continues, Errol begins to analyze her rhythm and notes aloud that it must be convenient to switch so easily between long-range and close-quarters combat. She smugly replies that her talents are natural, and someone like him without a class could never hope to match her. But Errol fires back, pointing out that while she dabbles in both styles, she has yet to truly master either one. That really sets her off, and she furiously vows to make him eat his words. She channels her magic into her sword, igniting it in flames, and proudly declares that only a true magic swordsman can wield a weapon like this. With that, she swings the flaming blade, sending a wave of fire trailing toward Errol, who calmly steps aside and cuts right through it. Still, even he begins to struggle to predict her next move, thrown off by the unpredictability of her footwork and sudden attacks. Acknowledging her skill, Errol comments that she must have spent a fair amount of time honing her craft. But then, without warning, he plants his feet and stops moving altogether, effortlessly deflecting each of her fire-infused strikes from a single position, showing her what real technique looks like. He remarks that if her foundation in swordsmanship had been more solid, even if slightly above the average, she could have made things far more difficult. But at her current level, she barely stood out from a background NPC. The words cut deeper than his sword. Humiliated and rattled, the girl lashes out wildly, Errol seizes the opening and unleashes a twin slash that extinguishes her flames instantly, leaving her stunned. Before she can even register what's happened, he uses Blink Step to teleport behind her and knocks her out cold with the blunt end of his sword. The arena erupts in applause as the judges officially declare Errol the victor of the 4th bracket. But while the crowd cheers, Errol is already deep in thought, wondering how he can replicate and refine the techniques she just used against him. A few days later, the final tournament is about to begin. Lilia returns to the guild house and tries to wake her father, insisting he join her to watch the event and cheer for both Errol and Rainer, who each won their respective blocks and earned a spot in the main tournament. Without even opening his eyes, her father tells her to go on her own because he isn't interested. Trying to provoke him, Lilia accuses him of being too scared to face Jorg. That gets a reaction as Rod snaps back, insisting he's not afraid of Jorg, but his anger quickly fades and for a moment he lowers his guard. In a rare display of honesty, he tells her that he picked up his sword again yesterday and realized just how rusty he's become. So rusty in fact that he doubts whether he could even win the Sword God tournament anymore. Lilia is instantly furious, reminding him that she didn't even qualify for the prelims, so hearing a man who still could make the finals calling himself rusty is beyond insulting. She tells him to take a good look around. Most swordsmen train their entire lives and still don't make it past the first round, while he still has what it takes to stand among the top. Eventually, Rod agrees to come along, and as they make their way to the stadium, his thoughts drift back to the days when he trained Rainer, back when he still had both arms, before becoming the one-armed relic he is now. He reflects on those memories with quiet warmth and finds himself wondering how Rainer will fare today. After all, she's his oldest student at this point, and he feels a deep connection to her progress. Meanwhile, inside the tournament grounds, Rainer appears to be on edge, her leg jittering nervously as she stares at the floor. She suddenly jumps in surprise when Errol appears beside her, asking whether she's afraid they'll end up facing each other right off the bat. The question snaps her out of her anxious thoughts, and she instinctively tries to punch him, but Errol catches her fist mid-air, just as the judges announce the opening match. Jorg, the reigning champion, will face Errol, the mysterious classless swordsman who's shocked everyone with his undefeated run so far. Errol rises to head to the arena, and Rainer gently grabs his hand to wish him luck. Errol then steps onto the battlefield, and from the stands, Lilia yells out, cheering him on with a crude but heartfelt battle cry, telling him to crush Jorg and shred him into 64 pieces. But the moment Errol spots Jorg emerging from the opposite side of the arena, something immediately feels off, and his instincts go on high alert. Jorg's eyes are glowing purple, a sharp fang protrudes from his mouth, and a single twisted horn juts from his head, so he looks like he's been possessed by something demonic. Errol's senses flare as he realizes this isn't going to be a normal fight, but it's Rod who puts the pieces together first. The moment he sees the weapon Jorg is wielding, he shouts out a warning to Errol, ordering him to stay back. The sword in Jorg's hand is not just any blade, it holds a powerful demon sealed within. Jorg speaks, but even his voice has changed, deeper and distorted, as he calmly admits he didn't expect anyone to recognize what he's become. Lilia, clearly unsettled, doesn't understand that Jorg should know exactly who Rod is, but Rod explains that this isn't Jorg speaking anymore. The demon inside the sword has taken over completely, which means Jorg no longer has control over his actions. Rod also reveals that the weapon is in fact the original sword once used by the sword deity to defeat the Demon King. However, before his death, the Demon King cursed the blade, tainting it so severely that it was supposed to be sealed away forever in the royal vault. The demon grins, stating that although he was sealed away for centuries, he remained patient, waiting for the day someone would come along to set him free and claim his power. And that day finally came with Jorg. With a voice that echoes across the stadium, he declares his identity to all present. He is Gelda, the destroyer of mankind. The announcement sends a chill through the crowd, and even Rainer rushes outside, wide-eyed. She admits she always believed Gelda was just a legend, a bedtime horror story to frighten children. The demon who, according to myth, had the power to wipe out the entire world. Panic breaks out instantly as people in the crowd recognize the name and scramble in terror, triggering a full-blown stampede. But Gelda delights in the chaos. The sound of terrified humans fleeing for their lives is music to his ears, and he's not about to let the show end so quickly. He conjures a massive magic circle beneath his feet, and in an instant, the entire stadium is sealed within a dome of swirling magical energy, trapping everyone inside. He cackles at the unfolding nightmare, savoring the fear as he declares he'll slaughter them all for his own amusement. But to his surprise, Errol doesn't flinch, and he remains exactly where he is, sword already drawn. Gelda mocks him, warning him to run while he still can. But Errol calmly replies that he has no intention of fleeing, because if the demon has been defeated once before, then it means he can be defeated again. Gelda bursts into laughter, reminding Errol that his previous defeat came at the hands of a sword deity, and according to Jorg's memories, there isn't a single sword deity alive today. Errol, however, fires back that there is still one left, and it's his own mother. And even if he wasn't born a sword deity, he's confident he can still bring Gelda down. The demon bursts out laughing, but his amusement is short-lived. Errol vanishes from sight, dashing forward with such speed that Gelda is forced to step back and counterattack. Errol deftly evades the incoming blows, and Gelda freezes in disbelief because he just witnessed the Divine Step technique, a move only sword deities are said to possess. However, Errol doesn't give him time to think, and he keeps using the Divine Step, appearing and striking from multiple angles, pressing the demon hard. But Gelda quickly regains his composure and smirks, reminding Errol that he's fighting within the body of a sword emperor, so these attacks won't inflict much harm. With a burst of speed, the demon launches into the air and crashes down on Errol's shoulder, slamming him hard into the ground. He believes the boy has finally fallen, but when the dust clears, he's stunned to see Errol still standing, barely scratched. Thanks to his rigorous training under Rainer, Errol had managed to absorb the full force of the blow. The sudden resistance shakes Gelda, who lunges forward to retaliate, but Errol remains composed, casually batting him aside before launching a devastating counterattack. Activating his infinite break technique, Errol assaults the demon with a relentless flurry of slashes, striking from every direction and completely overwhelming him in a blur of speed and precision. The brutal barrage triggers Gelda's deep-seated trauma, as he instantly recognizes the unmistakable techniques of a sword deity. He refuses to believe that a mere boy could wield such divine mastery, but before Gelda can even think of a counter-strategy, Errol unleashes a powerful finishing strike that sends the demon crashing into the ground, shrouded in a thick cloud of dust. The crowd erupts in applause, believing Errol has vanquished the demon for good, but Gelda is far from finished. His true body was never Jord, it was the sword itself, so all of Errol's damage had only harmed the host. Still very much alive, Gelda begins desperately searching for a new vessel. In a split second, he hurls himself toward Rod. Reacting instantly, Errol shoves Rainer out of harm's way while Rod steps forward, placing himself between the demon and his daughter. As the dust settles, a chilling scene emerges, and we see Rod standing motionless, the cursed sword in his hand, and its blade now pressed against Lilia's throat. Errol clenches his jaw, furious with himself for overlooking the sword. He now realizes that he should have targeted the blade, not Jord's body, but it's too late. Gelda snarls a threat, warning Errol that if he so much as flinches, Lilia dies. But Errol moves freely, defying him, and tells him plainly that he can't kill her. Rainer is stunned, unable to understand why he's provoking a demon. But when Gelda tries to force Rod's hand to strike Lilia, it doesn't move. So Errol explains that Rod's will is far stronger than Jord's ever was, so possessing him won't be so simple. Rod suddenly thrusts the sword into the ground, releasing Lilia from its grip. Gelda tries to fight back, attempting to regain control, but Rod doesn't give in. With a force of will that shocks even the demon, he rips himself free from Gelda's influence and hurls the cursed sword toward Errol. Without hesitation, Errol cuts it cleanly in mid-air, reducing it to nothing but dust, ending the demon for good. Later at the guild, we see that Rod had reignited his fire for swordsmanship, and thanks to the spotlight Errol had brought to the guild, a flood of fresh recruits had poured in, all desperate to be trained. Without holding back, Rod threw them straight into the deep end with harsh, no-nonsense drills. As he barked orders, he blasted them for relying too heavily on their skills, instead of mastering the basics of self-defense. The trainees, beaten down and drenched in sweat, beg him for mercy, swearing they couldn't take another minute of his relentless beatdown. At the same time, one of the trainees is crouched behind a nearby wall, trying to avoid the chaos, when Lilia happens to catch sight of him. She questions why he's slacking off when everyone else is supposed to be training, but he confesses that Rod is just too intense, and he needed to catch his breath. Lilia acknowledges that her father has definitely become more passionate about swordsmanship ever since he met Errol. Speaking of Errol, the student asks where he is, since he hasn't shown up all day. Lilia then reveals that Errol actually left the guild recently, and Reiner's gone too because she ran off to find him. Lilia has been holding it together until now, but the moment she says it out loud, her emotions catch up with her, and she breaks down in tears, feeling it's unfair that Errol would leave her behind without saying anything. As for Errol, he's currently on his way back to his hometown. During the ride, the driver is shocked to learn that Errol managed to win the Sword God Cup during his short time in the city. He asks if Errol is really okay with leaving now, right at the peak of his fame, but Errol explains there's nothing left for him to gain by staying because he's learned everything he could, and what matters now is returning home, where he finally intends to put all his skills to the test. Because this time, with everything he's gained, he might actually be able to defeat his mom. Back in Errol's hometown, his mother is in the garden, casually picking flowers when Errol tries to sneak up on her. But before he even gets close, she calls him out without turning around. She welcomes him back warmly and remarks that he's definitely grown stronger, especially since she didn't notice his presence until he was practically right behind her. Errol straightforwardly tells her that he won the Sword God Cup, and she lights up with pride, saying she won it too when she was his age. And just as Errol is about to ask for a duel to test how far he's come, she suddenly flashes forward and appears directly in front of him before he can react. It's just a playful move, but Errol realizes that if she'd been holding a sword instead of a flower, he might have been in serious danger, and that's exactly why he wants to test himself against her. She says she'd be happy to spar with him, but if they do it here, they'll probably end up demolishing the house. So instead she invites him to meet her at the training grounds behind the mountain, and Errol agrees without hesitation. Once they reach the training grounds, Farah cheerfully tells him that she's eager to see just how strong her son has become, then immediately lunges at him with another divine step attack. But having seen her use it once already, Errol has now figured out how to counter it. He raises his sword just in time to block her attack, then leaps into the air and executes a swift combo using Divine Slash, followed by Twin Blade Slash. Farah, however, manages to deflect all of the incoming attacks before they can connect. She's genuinely impressed that Errol was able to improvise a way to merge two techniques so fluidly. When Errol asks which skill she used to block him, since he's never seen it before, she calmly tells him she wasn't using a skill at all. By observing Errol, Farah learned not to depend too heavily on techniques herself, explaining that she was simply countering with regular sword swings. At the same time in town, the villagers suddenly hear a series of loud booms echoing from the forest. Everyone panics, fearing it could be a powerful monster, but it's actually just Errol and Farah clashing at full power. Farah attempts to use Divine Presence to slow Errol down, but it no longer works because he's already mastered it, rendering its effects useless. Farah is impressed by how far he's progressed, and she tells him it's time for her to stop holding back. Errol replies that he's about to do the same, and the two charge forward, striking each other simultaneously with infinite break. At the same time, Rainer has just returned to town as well, but notices there's no one around and wonders if it might have something to do with all the noise coming from the forest. Still, she doesn't care about that right now because she only wants to see Errol again. She knocks on the door of his house to check if he's home, but to her surprise, a young girl answers. Rainer assumes this must be Errol's younger sister Mira, and kindly asks if Errol is around. However, after one quick glance at Rainer's two bombshells, Mira immediately grows jealous and calls her a cow before trying to slam the door shut to blow them up. Rainer is left completely confused, unsure why she keeps getting called a freaking cow. But she holds the door open and explains that she only wants to talk to Errol. Mira, however, refuses to listen and snaps back that Errol would never want anything to do with a redhead cow like her. Right then, Errol and Farah return home, and Farah immediately tells her daughters to stop being rude to their guest. Mira lights up when she sees Errol and rushes straight into his arms, though she can't help but notice how bruised he and Farah look. So Farah casually explains that she and Errol had a sparring match and may have taken things a bit too far. Errol's little sister asks who won the match, so Farah tells her it's Errol, and Rainer is shocked to hear that, especially considering Farah is a sword deity. But Errol quickly downplays it, saying the only reason he won was because Farah isn't in peak condition anymore, since she stopped taking her training seriously years ago, so it wouldn't be fair to count this as a real win. Farah tells him not to say it like that, since it makes her sound like an old woman, but Errol reassures her with a smirk, saying she's still way too beautiful to be called that. They all head inside and sit down at the table to catch up. Farah wants to hear about all of Errol's adventures in the Sword City, but she admits she's even more interested in learning how Errol and Rainer first met because she's a sucker for romantic stories. Errol explains that he and Rainer lived together while he was in the city, and Farah's face lights up with excitement at the idea. However, Rainer quickly steps in to clarify that they were simply members of the same guild, so nothing inappropriate happened between them. Errol then asks Rainer why she came to visit all of a sudden, and she replies that she wanted to know why he left the guild so abruptly. Errol looks puzzled because he's pretty sure he handed in an official resignation before departing, so it's not like he just vanished without a word. But Rainer says that's not what she meant. What upset her was that he didn't say goodbye in person, and he just left without so much as a word, and she thinks he could have at least done that. And Errol admits he didn't really think much about it at the time. Farah then steps in and says she's happy that Errol has a friend who cares enough to come all this way just to check on him. But Rainer points out that this also happens to be her hometown, so she would come back eventually anyway. And besides, seeing Errol wasn't her only reason for returning, and she turns to Farah and respectfully asks if she'd be willing to accept her as a disciple. Farah is caught off guard by the sudden request and doesn't get a chance to respond, because just then the front door swings open and a familiar voice calls out. Farah immediately recognizes the voice and it's Evans. He walks into the room, asking for Farah's help, explaining that a terrifying noise was heard coming from behind the mountain not long ago, and they need to prepare in case a dangerous monster is approaching. Farah and Errol instantly realize they're the reason behind all the panic, but Farah knows she'll get an earful if she admits it, so she quickly lies and says the monster has already been taken care of. Evans doesn't question it too much because he's just relieved that the town is secure, and now that the tension has eased, He notices Rainer standing nearby and asks when she got back. Farah hadn't recognized her at first, since she looks quite different from how she did as a child. But now that she's paying closer attention, it's clear that Rainer bears a strong resemblance to Evan's late wife. Evans then wonders why Rainer is at Farah's house in the first place. So Farah casually tells him that Rainer just asked to learn everything there is to know about how to be a suitable wifey for Errol. Evans immediately breaks down in tears of joy, thinking his daughter is finally getting married, but Rainer panics and frantically clarifies that she only wanted to ask Farah to teach her how to improve her swordsmanship. Farah cheerfully insists that there will be time for both sword training and wife lessons, but when Rainer turns to Evans, hoping he'll talk some sense into Farah, she's stunned to see that he completely agrees with her. After losing his wife, Evans had always worried about Rainer's future, especially since the only thing he ever taught her was how to fight. So he's genuinely happy to hear that Farah is willing to teach her some practical homemaking skills as well. So Farah assures him that he can trust her to look after Rainer properly. Evans is grateful and says he'll head back to his duties now, officially leaving Rainer in Farah's care. He tells her to do her best, and Rainer is left staring in disbelief, trying to process how the situation spiraled like this. Meanwhile, Errol's father has been tucked away in his study the entire time, fully focused on his magical research. But he's not surprised when Errol walks in, as he already overheard the commotion earlier. Errol asks how Leon's research is progressing, and he's glad to hear that he's very close to a breakthrough. If his hypothesis is correct, it could turn into a true ultimate technique. Setting that aside, Leon then asks if it's true Errol brought home a cute girlfriend, and Errol doesn't exactly deny it, though he says he'd describe her as more gorgeous than cute. That said, he didn't come here to talk about Rainer because there's something more important on his mind. Errol explains that he just managed to defeat Farah in a duel, so now he wants Leon to teach him magic. However, Leon quickly shuts that idea down, saying it would be impossible for Errol to learn magic, and that he should just forget about it altogether. And while that is happening, Farah is in the kitchen with Rainer, trying to teach her how to cook. Rainer agrees to give it her best shot, but she has absolutely no experience with anything outside of wielding a sword, so much so that she ends up accidentally smashing the entire table to pieces. Rainer apologizes for the mess, but Farah laughs it off, saying it just means they'll have to start with the absolute basics. Not long after, Errol and Leon finish repairing the table, and while Errol is putting the tools away, he casually asks why Leon didn't just use magic to fix it, and Leon explains that Farah prefers it when he does things by hand. Still, since Errol seems curious to see some magic, Leon picks up Mira's broken mug and casts a rebuild spell, restoring it perfectly. Then, while they're putting away the rest of the supplies, Leon tells Errol not to get his hopes up too much about magic. He's already proven that someone born without a class can learn to use a sword, but magic is a different story. It requires a large mana pool, and that's not something you can train your way into. Errol admits that learning magic without a large mana reserve would be impossible. However, he asked if he'd be able to use magic at all, assuming he had some mana in his body. Leon replies that technically, Errol might be able to learn a few spells even without a mage class, so long as he does have mana. But he also doubts that's the case, since if Errol really had magic in his body, he probably would have accidentally triggered a spell at some point already. However, Errol insists that he does have mana. Back at the guild, while he was training with Rainer, he had been burning through large amounts of the guild's holy water. So Lilia went into storage and brought out a stash of old mystery potions for him to use instead. Rainer warned him not to drink them, since they could be toxic, but Errol figured drinking poison might unlock a poison resistance skill, so he went ahead and did it anyway. In the end, the potions didn't poison him, but Errol is convinced they restored something within his body, not divine protection but something else, and he believes it was mana. If that's really true, then Leon thinks Errol might actually have a shot at learning magic. He asks Errol if he can still feel that mana in his body, and after Errol confirms he can, Leon tells him to try moving it around and focusing it into a single point. Errol gives it his all, and at first, nothing seems to happen. But after a few moments, a faint blue glow begins to shimmer in his hand. His father lights up with excitement. The glow may be dim, but it's undeniable proof that Errol possesses mana, even if it's only a small trace. However, the moment doesn't last long because Errol starts feeling dizzy, as even generating that small light drained every bit of mana he had. Leon tells him that before he can even think about casting actual spells, he's going to need to work on expanding his mana pool. Fortunately, if there's one thing Errol excels at, it's hard work, and Leon believes he can make it happen in no time. The following morning, Errol marches into the item shop and drops a heavy pile of gold coins onto the counter, announcing that he wants to buy every mana potion they have in stock. From that point forward, he begins a rigorous routine, constantly draining and refilling his mana pool to force it to grow. And after 6 months, Errol's effort pays off, and his mana pool has increased enough for him to stably maintain a floating ball of mana. Leon proudly congratulates him on his progress, but there's still a long road ahead as Errol's current mana output is only equivalent to that of a typical 10-year-old. Lien then hands him a piece of parchment inscribed with Magiscript, the written language of magic, and explains how this will be different for him. Normally, someone with a mage class would instinctively gain the script for each spell as part of their skill set, but since Errol has no class-based magic skills, he'll have to manually memorize the script for every single spell he wants to use. It's going to be a demanding process, so Lien recommends that Errol consider studying the basics in the City of Magic, though he'll need to further train his mana before he can meet the minimum threshold required for entry. 3 years had passed since that moment, and Raynor had spent every single day since under the wing of Errol's mother, training not only to become a more skilled swordswoman, but also to improve as a proper homemaker. Earlier this morning, she was tasked with preparing the tea on her own, and the pressure got to her at first, leaving her a bit shaken, but she pulled through and eventually brought it over, her hands slightly trembling. She stood there anxiously as Errol's mom took a sip, gave it a moment to settle on her tongue, then looked up and smiled, saying the tea was just right. And Raynor hadn't expected such a small compliment to mean so much, but it filled her with more joy than she imagined. Her quiet little victory didn't last long though, as a sudden cry echoed from upstairs. It was Errol's younger sister Mira, yelling that Errol was gone. She'd gone to wake Errol, but his room was empty, and the only thing left behind was a note. Raynor and Errol's mom quickly read the short message, which simply said he was heading off to Arspel, the City of Magic, to begin his training. His mom's heart sank a little, hurt that he didn't even say goodbye, while Mira kept sobbing. That's when Raynor had a flashback to when she herself vanished years ago for Sword City Brescia, and how her choices must have hit her own family just as hard. Without hesitation, Errol's mom turned to her and said she never wanted Raynor to vanish like that. Raynor promised she wouldn't because she still had too much to learn from her. The older woman looked off in thought, remembering how her first daughter had left years ago, and now Errol had walked the same path. She couldn't help but wonder when, or even if, she'd see them again. Elsewhere, Errol was already riding out past the edge of the village, sitting beside the same night-turn driver from before, who looked both surprised and amused to see him again. Errol asked how long the trip would take, and the man estimated about 2 days. As the road stretched ahead, the driver couldn't help but remark how strange Errol was, how he went to Brescia, made a name for himself with jaw-dropping strength and talent, then ditched all the spotlight and came back to a tiny village no one's ever heard of. Then like smoke, he vanished for 3 whole years, and now here he was again, headed to Arspel of all places. Errol just shrugged it off, saying he wanted to take a shot at the exams and see how he measured up against the rest. Out of nowhere, a red-haired kid pipes up and asks Errol if he's heading to the entrance exam for the Magic Academy too. He finds it odd though, since Errol looks way older than the typical first-timer. But before Errol even gets a chance to answer, a sharp-tongued, blue-haired girl jumps in, scolding the boy for being rude and assuming things, and she says it's clear that Errol must have been failing the exam year after year. Just as Errol opens his mouth to explain that this is actually his first time going to that city, the girl cuts him off again, saying it's really inspiring to see someone so weak still trying to push past their limits. The red-haired boy immediately snaps back at her, and the two start arguing like crazy while a green-haired girl steps in and tries to calm them down, but she doesn't get very far. The red-haired boy spins back around toward Errol and asks what kind of magic he's into, proudly stating that he himself uses red magic. That triggers a memory in Errol, and he starts recalling how his dad once taught him about the 6 main magic affinities. Black stands for dark magic, white for light, yellow is earth, green is wind, blue means water, and red, of course, is fire. But back then, Errol never showed a natural tie to any of them, so his father figured the best move was to train him in every kind of magic they could get their hands on. Snapping back to the present, Errol tells the boy that he doesn't really know what kind of magic suits him, since he doesn't have a class at all. That stuns the boy, but the blue-haired girl scoffs and calls the boy a joke, and says that Errol is messing with him, because there's no way a classless nobody would ever be allowed to sit for the Academy's entrance exams. The redhead gets fuming and starts yelling for him to stop joking around, but Errol stays calm and pulls out his class card, holding it up for them all to see, and sure enough, it shows that he's completely classless. The kids all freeze in disbelief, blurting out that there's no way someone like him could ever pass the test. But before Errol can reply, a deep, earth-shaking roar erupts from the nearby forest, strong enough to make the trees around them tremble. Errol instantly recognizes the sound and warns them. It's the roar of a troll king waking from its slumber. The red-haired boy starts freaking out, shouting that they need to run for it because that thing's unbelievably strong, while the blue-haired girl shouts at the driver to get them out of there fast. The driver spins around in pure panic, saying that the roar scared his horses so badly that they've passed out. The blue-haired girl quickly realizes they're stuck with no way to flee, so she steels herself and starts laying out a battle plan. She tells the redhead and the green-haired girl that at the end of the day, a troll is still just a troll, and if they work together, they should be able to take down the slow brute. But that confidence quickly crumbles when the actual Troll King lumbers out of the woods, wielding a massive club that looks like it could flatten a house. Red tries to rally the group, insisting they hold it together and focus. But before anyone can move, the giant troll is suddenly sent flying through the air, slammed by an even more monstrous club from behind. Then a second troll, even bigger and nastier, steps out from the woods. The girls collapse, shaking and clinging to each other in fear, instantly realizing that their magic doesn't stand a chance. But the red-haired boy forces himself to stay cool because he can't show fear with the chicks watching. So he jumps out of the cab, takes a deep breath to steady himself, and raises his wand. And with every ounce of mana he's got, he hurls a fireball straight at the troll's face. For a second, it looks like they might actually land a hit. But once the smoke clears, the troll stands there, completely untouched, and a lot angrier. The boy freezes since that blast drained all his mana, and he's got nothing left to run or defend himself. The freaking troll then lets out a furious roar and charges straight at him. But right before it reaches him, a massive explosion shakes the entire area, engulfing the beast in flames and reducing it to ash, leaving everyone staring and stunned. Then Errol steps forward from behind, rubbing the back of his head and muttering that maybe he overdid it a little. The red-haired boy is speechless, and even the girls start whispering to each other, shocked that Errol just used explosion magic, something only elite mages are even capable of, and rarely so effortlessly. While they're still processing what just happened, Errol walks over to the horses and casts a healing spell to bring them back to their feet. As he turns around, he finds the red-haired boy already on his knees, bowing and begging him for forgiveness, and even more dramatically, asking to become his student so he can one day become a top-tier wizard too. Errol tries to brush it off and explain that they've got it all wrong, that he's just a test taker, nothing more. He even shows them the class card again to prove he doesn't even have a class. But the green-haired girl just smirks and says he must be some elite mage pretending to be classless to keep a low profile. Errol gives up trying to convince them and simply heads back to the road, continuing his journey to Arsbel. And after a few days of travel, they arrive just as the sun begins to rise. The city sits nestled beside a wide lake, with drawbridges on all sides that lift and lower to control the flow of people. The girls stare, dumbfounded, as the smug, loud-mouthed redhead trails behind Errol like a well-trained mutt, bombarding him with all kinds of questions. Once they step through the gates, the boy excitedly says Errol must be here to take the red magic exam, which means the two of them will be placed together. Meanwhile, the green-haired girl and the blue-haired one are headed toward the earth and water exams. That's when Errol finds out that the academy sorts its students and tests based on their elemental affinity, and he quietly hopes they won't toss him aside the way Brescia did, just because he doesn't have a class. But then something unexpected happens, because when he walks up to the reception desk, the lady behind the counter welcomes him with a smile, stamps his card, and hands him his exam number. Errol is still uncertain, and asks if it's really okay, even though he has no class. So the receptionist calmly replies that every candidate has the same right to take the test, and no one here gets turned away. That's when it really hits him that this place is nothing like Brescia. Feeling a flicker of hope, he heads toward the testing field. There he spots a group of kids lined up, one after another, taking turns. One boy launches a tiny fireball at a metal dummy and earns a pass. Before Errol can figure out what he's supposed to do, a loud, flashy guy with bright red hair strolls into the arena and casually asks if he's allowed to blow up one of the metal knights. The examiner looks puzzled at first, but after checking his ID card, he realizes the kid's an advanced caster, a rank that's incredibly rare to see. All the onlookers go quiet as the guy steps up, casts a spell, and unleashes a blazing column of fire that completely engulfs the armored dummy. He stands there, clearly impressed with himself, but the red boy doesn't let that slide, and suddenly shouts that Errol could top that without breaking a sweat. The flamboyant caster whips around, insulted, and asks if this nobody seriously believes a regular dude could beat someone with advanced magic. The red boy scoffs and fires back that Errol could eat him for breakfast and crap him out before lunchtime. The show-off laughs it off, saying those are empty words because no one else here could pull off a move strong enough to melt steel like he just did. Errol finally cuts in, pointing out that the metal knight didn't even budge, let alone melt. The instructor steps in to explain that the knights are crafted from mythil, one of the toughest metals on the planet, so there's no way it would go down that easily. The redhead immediately starts teasing the flashy guy again, dragging Errol into it by claiming he'd outperform him without even trying, so Errol smacks him upside the head and calmly walks into the testing zone. He decides to fire off the same spell that the arrogant guy used, which already gets everyone buzzing. But instead of a flashy show, his magic unleashes a small, concentrated flame pillar that looks way too weak to cause any damage. The show-off boy bursts into laughter, but it dies in his throat seconds later when the mythil knight suddenly collapses into a puddle of molten slag. The boy stares in disbelief, claiming that eruption spells aren't strong enough to melt mythil. But Errol casually explains that what he used was a custom version of that magic, where he focused all the heat into a tight column, generating a temperature far hotter than any standard eruption spell could reach. With that, he calmly walks off and heads straight to the blue magic zone, where the blue-haired girl lands her attack and clears the test. She's caught off guard seeing Arel show up, but before she can say anything, he steps up and fires off an Ice Edge spell that shatters the Metal Knight, then leaves again without a word, moving on to the green magic trial, leaving both the instructor and the students rattled. But just outside that arena, he spots the green-haired girl nervously waiting. She admits she hasn't even signed up yet because she's scared stiff. So Arel takes a minute to boost her confidence, gives her a little pep talk, and walks her over to the registration desk before heading to the arena. The exam this time is simple. Create a basic wind spell strong enough to spin the windmill in front of them. But in typical Arel style, he goes completely overboard and summons a freaking whirlwind that shreds the entire windmill into splinters, leaving the examiner speechless. The green girl's up next, but her nerves kick in again, and she starts hesitating until Arel encourages her one more time and gives her a push. And thanks to that, she manages to pass as well. With those 3 schools out of the way, he breezes through both the Light and the Yellow Magic Academy without breaking a sweat, then makes his way toward the Dark Magic School. The place looks like a rundown ghost town from the outside, with not a soul in sight until he hears a strange noise coming from a nearby crate. Just as he's about to check it out, a creepy woman suddenly calls out, sobbing about her missing pet, and asks Arel if he's seen it anywhere. Caught off guard, Arel points toward the crate and says there's something moving in it. The woman wastes no time tearing it open and pulling out a bizarre, toad-like creature with limbs in the wrong places. Beaming with joy, she proudly tells Arel she created this chimera herself and asks if he thinks it's cute. Arel just forces a smile, but before he can say anything, he nearly jumps out of his skin when a skeleton suddenly appears behind him. Reacting on instinct, he swings his wand and lops its head clean off. The skeleton casually bends down to pick it up again while Arel stares in disbelief, asking if she's some kind of undead beast. She brushes it off and cheerfully introduces herself as Latalia, claiming she's just a lovely office lady who works here. When Arel asks about the exam location, Latalia explains that the Dark Magic Academy has no restrictions, so anyone can walk in and take the test, since they barely get applicants. And just like that, Arel successfully qualifies for all 6 schools, and once his full registration is complete, he steps outside, only to be immediately surrounded by the red-haired boy and the blue and green-haired girls, all of them bickering about which Magic Academy Arel is supposed to join since he passed their exams. But Arel stuns them all by revealing that he cleared every single test, and he's planning to attend all of them. The kids are left in shock, their whole view of things rattled by how insane Arel's goals sound. Not one of them actually thinks he's for real until he lays out every student ID he got from all 6 academies. That finally leaves them speechless, but they're still baffled about how any academy would let him be registered at multiple places at once. Arel assumes it's because each school keeps its enrollment info locked up, so none of them notice that he's already signed up somewhere else. Still, even with that loophole, Arel is stuck with a major headache because all of his class times clash with each other. Luckily, showing up only makes up 20% of the final mark, so as long as he destroys the exams, he should be in the clear. Colette points out that it won't be that easy, since the textbooks don't cover all the up-to-date material taught in class. Arel agrees, and asks if the kids would be willing to share their notes with him. Since everyone's on board, that narrows it down to just 3 classes Arel needs to attend himself. On top of that, the Black Institute doesn't follow a fixed schedule, which means Arel only has to manage the white and yellow schools of magic. As soon as they hear that, the 2 girls slip away for a private conversation, while Kato turns to Arel and asks him to take the first class at the red school together. The girls already think trying to keep up with 2 prestigious schools at once is borderline insane, but Arel is just way too calm about all of it. After everyone finishes talking, Kato calls out to the group and says it's time for their first class. When they reach the Red Institute's lecture hall, Arel and Kato make their way toward the back to grab seats. But before they can sit down, that mage kid from the entrance exam calls them out. His name is Royce, and the moment he sees Arel, he points him out, saying there's no way what Arel pulled off during the test was legit. According to Royce, no inferior spellcaster should be able to outperform a high-level mage like himself. Arel stares at him, clearly confused, and casually says that he's not a spellcaster. That throws Royce for a loop, and he immediately assumes Arel must be an advanced class mage instead, since that would explain the high-level magic. But Arel says that he's not a mage either. Royce is left standing there, trying to process it all, before jumping to the next wild assumption. Arel must be some kind of ultra-high-rank archmage, but Arel denies that too. Now Royce is convinced Arel's just screwing with him, so when the teacher finally walks in to start class, Royce immediately speaks up and asks the instructor to confirm what class Arel actually belongs to. The teacher checks the class roster, and after finding Arel's name, he informs Royce that Arel is listed as classless, and Arel confirms it without hesitation. Royce is left stunned, completely speechless at the idea that the guy who outperformed him during the exam doesn't even have a class. But Kato just shrugs and tells him he'll eventually get used to Errol doing things that make no sense. Class is about to start, so the teacher tells everyone to find their seats and crack open their textbooks, because today's lesson is all about the finer points of Magiscript. Kato struggles to keep up with the complex runes the teacher is scribbling on the board, but Errol is cruising through it since he already learned all this stuff from his dad, so it's a breeze. Still, he's confused why there's even a lecture on this in the first place, because he thought anyone with a magic class got all this info automatically uploaded into their brain the moment they awakened. Almost like he read Errol's mind, the teacher addresses the class and explains that while it's true most students can cast spells effortlessly thanks to their class skills, understanding the raw Magiscript behind the spell is still essential. Mastering it allows you to fine-tune a spell's output and even modify its effects entirely, if you're skilled enough, and that instantly clicks for Errol. It's just like what he did during the entrance exam, and he didn't know it was considered advanced though, since his dad used to do it casually like it was nothing. After wrapping up the first lecture, Errol spends the rest of the day hopping between the other institutes to check out their classes. But honestly, most of them don't really teach him anything new. The only thing that catches his interest is the lesson at the Green Institute, and it's about flight magic. Errol perks up immediately, since that's one thing he's never actually tried before. Colette is completely baffled because she can't believe a guy who casually bends advanced level spells doesn't even know how to fly, but Errol tells her it's a long story. Turns out he asked his dad to teach him several times, but Leon flat out refused. The guy has an intense fear of heights and wouldn't touch any kind of flying spell even if his life depended on it. And when the lesson starts, the instructor tells everyone to spread out and picture themselves being carried upward by a rising gust of wind. With that visualization, and assuming they already have a flight skill that handles most of the spell work, taking off should be fairly simple. But for Errol, who has no such skill and has to do everything manually, the instructor's guidance isn't much help. He glances over at Colette, who doesn't seem to have any trouble following the instructions and lifting herself off the ground, but staying balanced mid-air takes practice, and sure enough, she loses control and drops back down, but she's confident she'll get it down soon enough. Meanwhile, Errol still needs to figure out how to get airborne at all. Everyone else is visualizing an updraft, so he wonders if he could mimic that effect by conjuring a small tornado beneath his feet. He decides to test it out, but the next second, he's shot hundreds of meters straight into the sky, and then slams hard back into the ground. Colette rushes over in a panic to check on him, but Errol says he's okay, though next time he's definitely going to need to tone down the tornado's output. Right then, one of the other students flies over to show off his skills. Errol and Colette are both impressed by how smooth and controlled his flight is. The student starts bragging that he's been working on his flight skill ever since awakening as a spellcaster, and he's never lost a single race. Errol is curious and asks what kind of race he's talking about, so Colette explains it's a competition where contestants fly through a course, and whoever finishes first wins. Errol thinks that sounds like a blast and immediately says he wants to enter the next one, but the student tells him he can't join unless he actually knows how to fly. Errol says he'll just train until he gets the hang of it, but the kid shakes his head and tells him there isn't enough time. The next race is only 2 months away, and while hovering might be easy to pick up, true flight takes at least 6 months of consistent practice, so realistically he has no chance. The student isn't trying to be rude, he just doesn't believe anyone could master flight in under 2 months. And he suggests Errol focus on joining next year's race instead, then he flies off. Colette turns to Errol and asks if he's really going to wait until next year's race after all, but Errol insists 2 months is all he needs to take to the skies. After several weeks, Kufa, Colette, and Kato are all back at school after dark, and Kato can't help but wonder why they dragged him out here. Colette tells him she left something behind and had to come pick it up, but she was terrified to go by herself. Kato gets that, but he still doesn't see why he needed to come too, especially when Kufa is already with her. Colette says that actually it was Kufa who suggested inviting him along. Kufa awkwardly admits that with all the strange talk going around lately, she figured having Kato with them might be safer. Kato raises an eyebrow and asks what rumor she's talking about. So Kufa explains that for the past few weeks, people have been spotting a ghost wandering around the school grounds at night. The second Kato hears that, he starts to panic because he's absolutely terrified of ghosts. Kufa bursts out laughing at how freaked out he gets and starts teasing him for it. But Kato shoots back that Kufa's been clinging to Colette this whole time, so she's clearly just as scared. The two of them get into a heated back and forth, while Colette tries to calm them down, but then they suddenly freeze, eyes wide, and point at the window behind her in pure horror. Before Colette can even turn around, a figure slides open the window and clamps a hand over her mouth. Kato immediately pulls out his wand and threatens to incinerate the intruder on the spot if they don't let Colette go. That's when a familiar voice tells him to chill out before someone notices them, and once the figure pulls down their hood, everyone realizes it's Errol. They demand to know what he's doing here so late at night, and Errol casually explains that he's been sneaking into the school every night for weeks to practice flight magic for the upcoming race. They're all blown away by how committed he is, but Kaito asks if he's really okay pushing himself like that since training every night has to be draining. Errol thanks them for worrying, but he explains to Kaito and the rest that he always makes sure he sleeps enough, and he even mentions that he'd been taking a nap outside right before they arrived. The kids almost can't process what they're hearing, so they ask if he seriously means he was casting flight magic while asleep, and Errol calmly tells them that's exactly what he was doing. Training like that lets him stabilize the spell until it becomes completely instinctive, and it also boosts his mana pool, so it ends up being incredibly efficient for his growth. Kaito is stunned by how seriously Errol approaches his training, and even though he knows he probably won't ever reach Errol's level, he decides he's going to start working himself hard too, and the others make up their minds to do the same. The following morning, Errol is back in class with Kaito, and while the teacher is writing a spell on the board, he notices there's an error in it, so he speaks up and points it out. The teacher quickly realizes that Errol is correct, so he starts fixing the spell, and Kaito thinks it's crazy impressive that Errol managed to catch the mistake so fast. Errol explains that he has every spell in the textbook memorized since they don't just pop into his head like they do for the others, but Kaito can barely memorize even a single spell, so he asks how Errol pulled that off. Errol replies that he just trimmed down and simplified a bunch of the spells so they'd be easier to remember and activate, and the teacher finds that approach really interesting and invites Errol to write one of his versions on the board. Errol does it without the slightest bit of hesitation, and after carefully looking over what Errol wrote, the teacher confirms that the simplified spell will function just fine. However, he also notices that Errol removed every safety measure built into the spell, so if anything goes wrong, there's a real chance it could explode. Errol knows about that risk, but he figures he can endure an explosion or two, so he didn't see any reason to waste time putting safeguards back in. As reckless as that sounds, the teacher can see that Errol has a rock-solid understanding of Magiscript mechanics, so he asks him if he'd be interested in taking a promotion exam to advance to the 2nd grade. Errol likes the sound of that, so he agrees to take the exam, but then Royce raises his hand and says he wants to join in as well, and since the teacher has no reason to refuse, they all head to the testing grounds together. The rules of the exam are straightforward, and along this track, a monster is going to be released, and Errol and Royce will have to bring it down before it gets too close to them if they want to pass. It sounds simple enough, so Royce volunteers to go first and jumps down into the track. A Minotaur is then let loose onto the course, and it immediately starts charging straight at Royce, so he fires off an eruption spell at the Minotaur, but he completely whiffs the shot. Errol can't help being impressed because he can clearly feel that the power of Royce's spell has jumped way up since the entrance exam, and the teacher agrees, saying it's the payoff for all the effort Royce has been putting in. But he also reminds him that no matter how strong your magic is, it doesn't mean anything if you can't actually hit your target. Royce frantically fires off more eruption spells as the Minotaur closes in on him, but his aim is complete trash, so the beast keeps getting closer until it's right about to strike him, only to suddenly vanish at the very last second. The teacher explains that Royce was never in any real danger, since they have a safety system in place to stop the monsters from actually harming the students, but he still hopes the exam drilled a valuable lesson into him about where he currently stands as a mage. As much as Royce hates to admit it, he can't deny that he's still too weak to clear the test, but the teacher tells him not to feel too bad about it because most students don't pass this exam until they've had 2 full years of training. Then it's Errol's turn, so he steps down onto the track, and the teacher releases the next monster, but for some reason this one looks a lot larger and more intimidating than the Minotaur Royce had to fight. Right then, another instructor rushes over to warn Becca's that there's been a mix-up, and a superior Minotaur was accidentally thrown in with the regular ones they normally use for the exam. Bacchus immediately realizes how bad that could be, since a superior Minotaur might actually be strong enough to punch through their safety system. So he shouts for Errol to get out of there, but Errol just says he'll be fine because he's confident he can take it down. Errol then conjures 2 blazing fire javelins and hurls them straight at the beast, but it's far too quick to fall for a direct assault and easily flips over them. However, Errol had already planned for that reaction, so he makes the javelins curve around in midair and slam into the Minotaur from behind, buying him just enough time to completely roast it with his customized eruption spell. And just like that, Errol officially passes the promotion exam, and later in the day, Kaito is hyping him up to the others, talking about how insane Errol's performance was. But Kufa notices that Errol seems bothered by something, so she quietly asks him what's wrong. Errol explains that he was only allowed to take the promotion exam ahead of schedule because the teacher personally recommended him, but that promotion only counts inside the Red Institute, so now he has to figure out how to convince the instructors at all the other schools to sign off on the same thing. The next day, Errol doesn't waste a second, and he goes straight after the blue class instructor and pushes her to let him take the promotion test so he can jump up a grade. But she isn't buying it and questions whether he's even ready and reminds him that those exams are only held once a year. And when the time comes, he's welcome to apply like everyone else. Errol, of course, doesn't let up that easily and presses her on the Academy's recommendation system, saying if she gives the word, he can take the test right now, no waiting required. She acknowledges it's a valid rule, but says it's strictly reserved for students who are truly one in a million, exceptional beyond question. So Errol tells her to just watch his magic once and decide for herself if he fits that description. The instructor exhales sharply and turns to him, saying that if he starts showing up to class like a normal student, she'll consider taking a look and judging if he's ready for a promotion. Errol pulls a face and mutters that wasting time in those pointless lectures is probably the dumbest thing he could do right now. That seriously sets her off, and she snaps, shouting at him, asking if he really thinks her class is that worthless. He shrugs, saying her lectures might help beginners still learning the basics, but to him they're just a boring cycle of stuff he's already mastered. Her face goes beet red with fury, yelling that she'll be the one to judge whether his magic is basic or not. Errol smirks inside, knowing he got the reaction he needed. Finally, he's one step closer to unlocking the advanced magic he's been aiming for. She drags him straight to the training arena while Kufa watches from above, wondering why the hell Errol would go out of his way to piss off Hengel, the blue class mage, especially when she's only one step shy of becoming an archmage, a title that puts her near the top of the magical world. But Errol clearly doesn't care, standing his ground in the arena like it's just another day. Hengel then lays out the rules, no physical attacks allowed, and if he wins the mock battle, she'll approve his exam, and Errol nods without hesitation, saying he feels pretty confident about his odds. That alone lights a fire under her, stunned by how cocky he is when she's basically a borderline archmage, so she decides to shut him down right then and there. The moment the duel kicks off, she launches a monstrous ice storm spell that spins a deadly vortex around Errol. The chill is so brutal that even Kufa, sitting far above, struggles to breathe through the freezing air, and she silently prays he makes it out alive, but when the winds finally settle, her heart sinks as Errol is frozen solid and turned completely to ice. Hengel smirks, saying Errol's just like the rest, loud talk but no bite to back it up. She then turns toward Kufa, giving her a quick lesson mid-battle, saying that whenever you're in a mock fight, you should open with a heavy hitter to throw your opponent off balance and end things fast. But right before she can gloat about her easy win, the ice casing around Errol suddenly cracks, and he blasts his way out with some punches. Turns out, Hengel wasn't the only one quick with her casting. Errol had already layered protective ice barriers around himself mid-spell, shielding him from the worst of her blizzard. She nods, giving him credit for thinking fast, but warns him it's still not gonna be enough. Errol just shrugs and says they won't know until he actually tries. Then without hesitation, he summons a set of ice shards. Hengel looks unimpressed, calling them beginner-tier magic, but Kufa's eyes go wide as Errol suddenly doubles the count, while she herself can barely handle 2 at most. Hengel raises an eyebrow and gives a crooked smile, saying it's decent for a fresh recruit, but nowhere close to something that could threaten her. Instead of playing defense with an ice wall, she decides to meet him head-on and fires her own shards. The 2 volleys collide midair in a frosty blast, shattering in a shower of frozen shards. Errol watches the result and admits he probably underestimated her, but of course an instructor wouldn't go down that easy. Hengel suddenly remembers that Errol's the guy who topped the entrance exam, and she instantly figures out ice shards must be his signature move, but she also points out that it won't be enough against her because it's her specialty too. But Errol doesn't flinch, saying again that it's worth testing out anyway. This time he unleashes an even bigger volley, twice as many as before. Hengel laughs and mirrors the move, matching his count, boasting that she could pump out hundreds if she felt like it. Kufa is stunned by what she's watching because these 2 aren't just exchanging spells, they're going blow for blow like elite mages. But Errol's still got more up his sleeve, and out of nowhere he summons 100 ice shards at Hengel's right side, then another wave on her left, and even more right behind her, trapping her in a ring of frozen death. That throws her off, and she quickly realizes that duplicating shards is one thing, but coordinating them in multiple directions takes high-level casting. She knows her own shards won't cut it this time, so she raises an ice wall just in time, shielding herself from the icy barrage. But something doesn't add up, as Errol's shards are still hitting just as hard, even though multiplying them should have seriously drained their power. Hengel stays sharp though, because she knows Errol's attacks can't break through her wall, so she starts conserving mana, waiting for him to burn out and leave himself open for one final decisive strike. But before she can even think about launching her final spell, Errol beats her to it. He unleashes his finishing move instead, and Hengel is stunned because there's no way he still has the mana for that, and she's certain he can't break through her thick ice barriers. But it was all part of Errol's setup, as she's boxed herself in with her own defenses. So now she's trapped inside and wide open, as he conjures a massive ice spear above her and sends it crashing down without hesitation. Hengel scrambles, casting a shield in panic, but it's not strong enough to fully absorb the impact. The spear punches through and slams into her with a deafening hit. Errol exhales in relief, muttering that she was one hell of an opponent. Meanwhile, Kufa stands frozen, unable to believe her eyes that a student just took down a full-fledged academy teacher. Later on, he catches up with the rest of the group outside, where Kufa fills everyone in on the fact that Hengel decided to promote Errol on the spot, skipping the official exam entirely. Kaido pumps his fist, thrilled for Errol, but Errol isn't about to stop now. His sights immediately lock onto Colette and the Green School next, and a little while later, we see Colette tag along as Errol approaches the Green class instructor and asks to take their promotion exam. She turns him down flat, saying he'll have to wait until the official date like everyone else. Errol pushes back, insisting that if she just gives him a recommendation, he could take the test right now, and even offers to show off his magic. But she holds her ground, saying their rules aren't the same as the other classes. At the Green School, no one skips the line, and exams follow the schedule, no exceptions. Errol grumbles, asking if there's any way to get around that, and the teacher, clearly fed up, says only the headmaster can make that kind of call. Errol immediately starts plotting how to reach the headmaster, but the teacher cuts him off, warning that bothering the headmaster for no good reason could get him expelled. That shuts him up quick, until Khaled quietly steps in with another option. She reminds him the Academy's annual flight race is right around the corner, and every year the winner gets a personal meeting and award from the headmaster himself. Errol lights up at the idea, thinking it's the perfect plan. Not only can you meet the headmaster, but he can prove himself in the process. The green teacher chuckles, telling him not to get ahead of himself because there will be more than 300 people racing, and winning won't be easy, but Errol doesn't even flinch and says with a smile that he's going to win it at all costs. Eventually race day rolls around, and the participants line up as the announcer introduces the school's headmaster. He gives a short greeting, wishing everyone a safe competition and reminding them to keep things clean. Just before the race kicks off, that green-haired kid shows up again, strutting up to Errol and tossing more attitude, asking if he's here to make a fool of himself again. But Errol just stares, completely blank, as he doesn't even recognize him, and that makes the brat snap. Furious, he shouts his name Skake, and declares that he's destined to become the fastest mage in the world. And with that, the race begins, and the sky fills with flashes of magic as the racers shoot off into the air, some bumping into each other and tumbling out. All the more skilled flyers start pulling ahead through the chaos. One guy rockets forward like a missile but can't steer for anything, slamming right into a wall and getting disqualified on the spot. 15 contestants break away from the rest, leading the charge, and most of them are upperclassmen with high-ranking badges. But one of the professors named Dumble notices something odd. Two unfamiliar faces are up there, both first years, and they're none other than Errol and Skake. Skake can't believe Errol's still with them and demands to know how he's keeping up. But Errol calmly replies that everyone is just moving slowly on purpose. Skake looks confused, so Errol explains that it's a long-distance race, and if they burn all their mana up too early, they'll crash before the finish line. They keep a steady pace and eventually hit the first tough section, a tight turn through a narrow gatehouse followed by a sharp left. Some of the racers try to blitz through, but they fail to turn in time and end up crashing into the lake below. But Skake plays it smart, sticking to the middle of the pack for better positioning, and nails the turn. He grins, assuming Errol got wiped out, but to his shock, Errol's still right there beside him, smooth as ever. Then comes Dione, the reigning champ of the last 4 years, who suddenly kicks into high gear and surges ahead of the group. But both Errol and Skake hold tight on her tail, refusing to drop back. Even Dione glances over, clearly surprised that two newbies are still in the running. Skake begins to strain, his pace slipping as he fights to keep up, but he digs in, refusing to back off. That's when Dione decides to get serious, and she boosts her speed again, but this time going full throttle. Skake tries to match her, but he starts gasping, sweating buckets as his body struggles to keep up. But his mana finally runs dry, and he slows down. Professor Dumble gives Skake some well-earned praise, saying he's got serious potential if he keeps putting in the work. But just then, to everyone's surprise, Errol is still hot on Dion's tail. She glances back, stunned that someone's still keeping up at this ridiculous pace, and decides to step it up again. Errol quickly realizes that his 2 months of training aren't gonna cut it, not against someone like her, so he pulls out his trump card. He starts casting wind magic beneath his feet, forming small air pockets to leap off of. The technique gives him just enough lift and momentum to keep matching Dion's speed, staying right on her level. The commentator's totally lost, unable to make sense of what he's seen, but Dumble catches on fast. He breaks it down, explaining Errol's strategy, but adds that generating that kind of lift would normally require the leg strength of a top-tier swordsman, which doesn't add up. But what they don't know is that Errol never skips leg day, and he's not letting up as he keeps the pressure on Dione. Still, Dumble warns that the home stretch is coming up fast, and there's a nasty sharp turn before the finish, so at these speeds they'll crash if they don't start slowing down soon. Dione knows that too, and she holds her pace for as long as possible, but eventually eases up because she knows she'll wipe out if she doesn't. Errol, on the other hand, doesn't even flinch, and he barrels toward the corner at full speed, slams a wind pocket, and launches himself into the turn with perfect timing. It works, and he clears the final turn and crosses the finish line first, snatching victory. Dione finishes just behind him, but instead of being bitter about it, she walks over, shakes his hand, and congratulates him with a smile, wishing him luck in whatever comes next. Skake finally shows up too, crawling in at third place before collapsing to the ground, completely drained. A little later, the headmaster steps forward and awards Errol his medal and certificate. But Errol doesn't waste a second and asks right then for a promotion to second grade. The headmaster grins and says Errol's performance was outstanding, and he's more than earned it, and the promotion is approved. And with that, Errol completes his promotion in the green, red, and blue schools, leaving only 3 more schools to go. Several days later, Errol goes to the yellow school and asks the instructor if he can rise to the next class, but she explains that the only way to earn an early promotion is by proving real skill through a useful invention in the school's showcase. However, since Errol failed to register on time, all the available slots have already been filled, so this means that he must wait several more months until the next showcase is held. Growing impatient, Errol begs her to make a special exception just for him, but she firmly refuses. Pushed to desperation, he insists that he has created a completely new type of golem, yet she still refuses to make an exception on his behalf. Just then, another instructor named Rogweld takes an interest in Errol's golem. He tells Errol that if he truly can present something special, he will take him on as a research assistant and even secure him a reserved spot in the showcase. The offer sounds almost too perfect, but Errol agrees. Behind him, the first teacher quietly believes he has made a grave mistake, which leaves Errol confused. She explains that while Rogwell can indeed send him into the showcase, his standards are extremely brutal because he is obsessed with golems. Errol doesn't see the issue at first, so she reveals the truth. Rogwell specializes in combat golems and uses the showcase to ruthlessly overpower weaker students with his creations. Shocked, Errol finally understands that Rogwell simply wants to use him as a living test subject. The teacher offers to help him withdraw from the deal, but Errol refuses her help, confident in his own fighting strength. A short time later, the day of the showcase arrives, and all the teachers proudly display their creations. Soon after, Rogwell steps into the arena and announces that he will now present his golems. The moment he appears, the crowd begins whispering that another student is about to be humiliated. Rogwell then summons his earth golems and orders Errol to bring out his own. Errol nods and calls forth his golem Alpha, and when Alpha steps forward, Rogwell is stunned to see it built entirely out of metal. The students watching are impressed by Errol's ingenuity, while Rogwell assumes the metal frame is far too heavy to move properly with earth magic. Suspecting that someone might be hidden inside the armor, he rips off the golem's head, only to find it completely hollow. As he holds the head in his hands, Rogwell finally realizes that Errol's golem is made from a custom lightweight metal mix. Convinced that the lightweight metal made Errol's golem fragile, Rogwell orders his earth golems to launch their attack, and as one of them rushes forward, Alpha shifts into a combat stance. The moment the golem swings its fist, Alpha stops the blow dead in its path, and the sheer force of the counter shatters the attacker's arm. Watching his strongest weapon get effortlessly destroyed, Rogwell finally stops looking down on Errol's creation. When the damaged golem regenerates its arm, he commands all the others to reinforce their bodies. With their strength boosted and attacks coming from multiple directions, Rogwell is certain that Alpha can't possibly block everything with only 2 arms. In response, Errol calmly summons several swords for Alpha, and the golem smoothly takes up a proper sword stance. Rogwell assumes this is a fatal mistake and sends all of his golems charging in for the finishing blow. Instead, Alpha wipes out every single one of them with a single sweeping slash, leaving Rogwell frozen in disbelief. Errol thinks it was nothing more than a basic attack, but Rogwell insists that such an advanced sword technique should be utterly impossible for a golem. Errol explains that while ordinary golems can't wield swords, Alpha was built with a special lightweight metal and flexible joints, reducing mana consumption while greatly increasing its mobility. As Errol finishes explaining, Rogwell finally grasps the theory behind the design, yet he still struggles to believe it actually works. Errol then asks if his research is sufficient to qualify him for the promotion exam. Rogwell tells him that assistants aren't normally allowed to take it, but adds that he can directly request the headmaster to promote him if Errol agrees to join his golem laboratory. And without a second thought, Errol accepts. After officially receiving his promotion at the Yellow School, Errol heads to the White Institute to take another promotion exam, where he meets Instructor Keed. Seeing that her eyes are always closed, Errol asks if she's alright. Keed calmly explains that she is naturally blind, but instead perceives the world through the magical energy within people and objects. However, when she peers into Errol's body, she discovers countless bottomless streams of magical power inside him. Stunned by the overwhelming amount of energy, Keed anxiously asks if he's truly okay, and Errol reassures her that he's perfectly fine. In the end, she decides to set aside the strange phenomenon inside him and leads him toward the trial slate. As they step into the shady cave, Cade begins explaining that the skeletons of fallen warriors once rested there, but after the cave was flooded with a massive concentration of mana, their bones became animated. To begin the exploration, Errol casts a light spell, prompting Cade to warn him that the undead are drawn to it, and before long, skeletons swarm toward Errol, but he instantly erases them with a holy ray and keeps moving deeper inside. Soon after, Cade hurries to catch up to him, and when Errol asks if the exam continues further into the cave, she tells him he has already passed since the only requirement was defeating a number of undead. Though she worries that he might exhaust his mana on the way back, Errol calmly assures her that he hasn't even tapped into 1% of his reserves. All of a sudden, a powerful undead attacks them from behind, so Errol blasts it away with another holy ray. While Cade remains on guard around the dangerous skeleton, the undead begins to introduce himself. But to the undead's shock, Errol keeps firing holy rays at his bony butt, never giving it the chance to even say its own damn name, and as the struggling undead attempts to recover its shit breath, Errol unleashes a far stronger Holy Cross spell, reducing it entirely to ash. Sensing the overwhelming power of the attack, Cade explains that Errol just destroyed an undead wight, a high-rank undead variant. She is also stunned that he can use Holy Cross at all, since it is a technique reserved only for advanced exorcists. Errol, however, simply remarks that it feels only slightly stronger than Holy Light, leaving her completely at a loss for words. Sometime later, Errol makes his way to the Black School, and while he is quietly reading through some books, Latalia suddenly sneaks up behind him, and he reflexively knocks her head clean off. As she scrambles to retrieve it, Errol sighs in disappointment over the fact that the Black School doesn't offer any promotion exams. Leisha explains that they used to hold them in the past, but everything changed after their entire ranking system collapsed. As she grumbles about the school's low enrollment, Errol notices just how empty the building feels. He then asks what lies behind the back door of the reading room, since the room beyond it appears completely vacant. Latalia tells him that it's actually a private testing chamber where members can experiment with black magic, because unlike the other schools where students can train outdoors, black magic has to be tested in isolation, since it's known to shave years off people's lifespans. With an empty room now at his disposal, Errol decides to use it as a demolition arena to experiment with advanced spells, and later on, he opens a random book inside the chamber, but quickly realizes it doesn't look familiar at all. As Errol opens the book, it suddenly erupts with a blinding glow that floods his vision, and when the light finally fades, the pages inside are left completely blank. Errol realizes that the book's magical energy has leaked into the air, and sensing an evil presence within that aura, he begins searching for it. Moments later, he spots a man floating in midair, who thanks him for setting him free. When Errol asks if he's a demon, the man confirms it without hesitation. The demon explains that Errol is the first person in years to touch the book that had been sealing him, and as a token of gratitude, he offers to grant Errol a reward. Errol dismisses the offer, showing no interest, which makes the demon smirk darkly. He tells Errol that he needs a living sacrifice to return to the demon realm, then suddenly lunges at him. Errol effortlessly blocks the attack and fires back with his wand, but when he tries to cast an explosion spell, it fails to activate. The demon then reveals that he has trapped Errol beneath a magical ceiling barrier that nullifies his magic. Realizing that spells are useless, Errol switches to direct combat. He swings his wand like a blunt weapon and cleaves straight through the demon's head in a single strike. Stunned, the demon quickly regenerates and reattaches it. Believing Errol to be a magic swordsman, the demon questions him, but Errol casually says he's actually classless and immediately starts beating him down. As the demon endures the relentless barrage, he insists that physical attacks won't work on him. Still, Errol keeps attacking like a man possessed, unleashing countless slashes on the overwhelmed demon. Shocked that it's still alive, Errol continues the assault without slowing down. Eventually, the demon is forced to shrink its body to conserve mana until Errol crushes it down to the size of a rat. At last, the demon admits defeat and begs for mercy, and Errol finally agrees to stop. As the demon breathes in relief, Errol places a strange seal on its stomach, explaining that he has now turned it into his slave. When the demon tries to resist, its entire body bursts into flames, and Errol calmly explains that it will suffer unbearable pain whenever it even thinks about betraying him. At that moment, Latalia walks in to investigate the noise and is shocked when she spots the demon, but Errol reassures her that there's nothing to worry about since he made it his familiar. A short while later, Errol goes out to meet the other kids, who praise him for all of his recent promotions. They also tease and bully his unfortunate demon familiar, now named Maddie, but Errol lets them have their fun. He then orders Maddie to go buy everyone lunch, but Maddie refused, saying he wasn't an errand boy, yet after a little burning, he agreed to go. and while Maddie heads toward the cafeteria, he silently swears to someday break free from Errol's contract and make him pay for everything. After 6 months, the headmasters of all 6 schools gather for a formal meeting. There, an official informs them that each school's annual budget and sponsorship will now be determined by the number of students and staff they have. When the Black School's budget is announced, its headmaster Blag angrily protests that his school has suffered a 40% reduction in funding. The official calmly explains that the Black School's overall contributions are far lower than the others, so receiving fewer resources is only fair. Frustrated, Blag complains that he can no longer support his research, while the Red School's headmaster Redora openly mocks him for wasting his time on childish evil spells. At the same time, the White School's headmaster Guido argues that black magic is inherently dangerous and suggests that the school should be shut down entirely. Fortunately, the official states that he won't be making such a drastic decision in this meeting. He then reveals that the current budget is still subject to one final adjustment, explaining that all schools can receive increased funding if they perform well in the upcoming 6 school magic competitions. He tells Blag that if the Black School manages to win, he will restore its budget to last year's amount. Furious at what he sees as unfair terms, Blag realizes they are trying to completely bury his school. Back with Errol and the group, Errol wonders what the upcoming Mage Lord Festival will be like. The kids explain that it is the biggest event in the city, with the 6th school magic competition serving as its main attraction. Kato asks Errol if he plans to participate, and Errol reveals that he will be competing in the rookie division. Excited to watch him fight, the kids begin arguing over which type of magic he should use, but Errol tells them that he has no intention of limiting himself to just one element. Curious, Maddie asks which school Errol will represent, so Errol replies that the headmasters have summoned him for a meeting the next morning, so he will likely find out then. Noticing Maddie's interest in the festival, Errol asks if he actually likes it, but Maddie brushes it off, claiming that demons don't care about human celebrations. Later that night, Blag sketches a bizarre magic circle on the floor, quietly talking about proving the true might of black magic. As he attempts to summon the strongest beast from the demon world, a writhing mass of flesh emerges from the circle. To his horror, it immediately lunges at him and devours him whole. Seconds later, the monstrous blob fully absorbs Blag, leaving it free to put the ignorant Magic City at risk. The next morning, that freakish slime starts creeping across the ground, gulping down every monster Blag had locked away for his twisted experiments. A short while later, Maddie nudges Errol awake to kick off the day. Still half asleep, Errol mutters that he was just dreaming about all the wild insanity he went through during his time at the academy. Later on, in the Green School's courtyard, the head instructors gather to choose their top picks for the upcoming competition. But with Blag still nowhere in sight, a few of them begin to wonder if he even has a single student worth putting forward. While the faculty bickers over which top contender to nominate, Errol finally arrives, curious to know which school he's expected to represent. The moment he steps up, every single instructor instantly shouts that he's the one representing their school. But before anyone can figure out what's going on, the ground starts shaking heavily, thunderous footsteps echo toward the school, and even Errol pauses, caught off guard by the strange sound. Not far away, Hufa and the rest are busy helping with the festival setup when they spot the slimy creature crawling up the wall. Inside its translucent body, they can see the struggling monsters it swallowed. Horrified by the sight, the students scatter, and Errol immediately launches into the air to intercept the beast. Down below, Royce decides to buy time by stalling it. He fires off a fire lance, but it just bounces off like nothing. Realizing basic spells are useless, he tries to prep a massive eruption spell. But before he can finish casting, the slime's tendrils whip out toward him. Thankfully, Dione swoops in, grabs him, and gets them both out of danger just in time. Grateful to be alive, Royce quickly thanks her. With Royce out of reach, the slime redirects its attention toward Colette, and the others in barrels after them. Just then, Colette stumbles and falls, and there's no one close enough to help her up. Hufa tries to wall off the creature with an ice barrier, but the thing smashes through it like it's nothing but sugar glass. Kato follows up with his own eruption magic, but the slime tanks it without flinching. As Colette braces for the worst, she recalls Errol's voice in her head telling her to never give up. Gathering what courage she has left, she casts a powerful tornado spell, hoping it'll buy her a second or two. Sadly, it does absolutely nothing, but at least she fought for her life. And just as one of the tentacles snaps toward them, Errol comes diving in and slices it clean off with his wand. He then glances back, proud of how the kids faced the monster head-on. Moments later, the other teachers arrive at the scene, rushing to back him up. And as they do, they tell the students to fall back and get to safety, which makes Errol pause and ask if he's even allowed to join the fight. But with full confidence, the headmasters tell him to step aside and leave it to them. As the strange slime inches closer, the teachers immediately suspect it was summoned by the Black School. And while they're all itching to give Blag a serious earful for pulling this crap, they focus on figuring out how to punch through the slime's ridiculous magic resistance. At first, they assume it's just tough enough to block weak student spells, so the blue headmaster and Guido step in, launching full-force magic attacks. But to their shock, the slime brushes them off like nothing, barely flinching, leaving both of them dumbfounded. Not giving up, the red and green headmasters team up and unleash a blazing fire tornado meant to vaporize anything in its path. But the damn thing survives that too. Watching it endure the brutal spell, the green headmaster starts to suspect that it's not just resisting their magic, it's absorbing it. With brute strength clearly off the table, the yellow headmaster tries to lock the thing down by raising massive earth walls around it. For a second, it looks like the plan might work, but the slime starts smashing through the rock like it's punching through cardboard. The teachers regroup and weigh their options. One suggests pumping it full of magic until it explodes, but another warns that if the slime feeds on all that mana, it'll just bulk up even more. Before long, the earth wall crumbles and the creature breaks out, stronger than ever. From a safe distance, Aurel watches the whole thing unfold. Every single spell they've thrown so far, he already knows it all, so with nothing new to gain, he starts feeling like he's outgrown everything this so-called city of magic has to offer. Maddie glances at him and asks if they're just gonna stand by and keep watching, thinking maybe the teachers still have some ace magic up their sleeves. Errol decides to give it a bit longer, and Maddie shrugs, still trying to figure out how a gluttony slime like that slipped out of the demon realm and into the human world. Out of nowhere, Errol grabs Maddie by the collar, demanding to know exactly what that slime is. Caught off guard, Maddie quickly caves and explains that it's a creature that feeds on magic to grow. The more mana it devours, the bigger and nastier it gets, and worst of all, magic is basically its favorite snack. That gets Errol thinking, what would happen if someone hit the slime with a spell so powerful it couldn't absorb it? Maddie laughs, saying that kind of firepower doesn't even exist. Then he adds that physical attacks are just as useless as swords, weapons, or even blunt force. The slime swallows all of it, but Errol's not buying it, and without saying a word, he jumps down, conjures up a sword, and gets ready for battle. Maddie stares, confused why a magician would bother using a blade, but Errol just smirks and reminds him he's no stranger to swordplay. Offended, Maddie grumbles about how Errol beat him using nothing but a magic wand, and Errol calmly tells him to quit whining and get ready to fight because they've got a monster to deal with. Not far off, the slime keeps creeping closer to the city, and the teachers start to fear the worst, that their home might be done for. The green headmaster suggests evacuating the entire population while they still can, but before they act, Errol comes flying down from the sky at breakneck speed, heading straight for the slime, and in a flash, he slashes with a technique called Dragon Fang Slash, and a lightning dragon bursts forth, tearing right into the monster as the students watch in awe from a distance. Maddie stares wide-eyed, shocked that the slime didn't absorb Errol's sword strike like it did with the magic. But Errol doesn't look satisfied. In fact, he seems annoyed that the hit didn't finish the job. Just then, the magic headmasters appear behind him, asking if he's actually a swordsman. When Errol tells them he doesn't even have a class, they're completely speechless. He tells them straight up that they should leave, because their spells will only make the creature stronger. And when he mentions that the slime is drawn to magic, the green headmaster suddenly realizes the thing is heading for the main school building, where all the students are gathered. The teachers want to jump in and back him up, but Errol stops them cold. If they interfere, he says, they'll only slow him down. Though they hesitate to leave everything to one kid, Errol's confidence wins them over, and they retreat to protect the students. Down below, the slime starts pulling itself back together after Errol's brutal hit. Maddie smirks, proud that a fellow demon creature managed to survive. Errol shoots him a glare and says that if he keeps running his mouth, he'll throw him straight into the slime. To prove his point, he grabs Maddie and dangles him right in front of the monster. But instead of attacking, the slime backs off. Errol jokes that maybe Maddie just tastes awful, but Maddie grins, thinking the slime is afraid to face both of them together. Not wanting to let the oversized slime roam free and keep terrorizing people, Errol pins it down with an earth wall spell. He then flies in and summons several golems around the barrier, and with the slime surrounded, Errol launches a powered-up infinite break alongside the golems. Their synchronized assault slices the slime apart, and the watching students erupt into cheers, shouting for Errol to finish the damn monster off. Seeing how he mixes brutal sword techniques with high-level magic, the teachers quietly wonder how someone without a class is pulling off this kind of insane power. But the moment doesn't last because the golems fall apart from the strain of the attack, and the slime starts piecing itself back together again, so Maddie wastes no time mocking Errol for failing yet again. This time, Errol switches tactics, and he's going to use magic. Maddie scoffs, reminding him that the slime absorbs spells, not dies from them, but Errol has something different in mind. If he pours in enough mana, he thinks he can force the slime to overload and break, and with zero hesitation, he starts drawing a massive magic circle. As Errol finishes drawing the red circle, Maddie rolls his eyes, thinking it's just basic fire magic, and gets ready to watch him get defeated. But Errol calmly says it's not that simple, then instantly summons 5 more magic circles, each a different color. Maddie's jaw drops, and he can't believe what he's seeing because Errol is actually using 6 separate elemental magics at the same time. But the real shock comes when Errol fuses all 6 into a single massive hybrid circle. That's when a memory hits, and Errol recalls his father's voice, warning him never to mess with this kind of unstable spell unless it was a do-or-die moment. Back then, Errol had asked Lian why this magic was so dangerous, and Lian explained that these magic circles were powered by a massive surge of mana and were designed to launch a relentless chain of combined attacks. But if the caster lost control, it would trigger a massive explosion strong enough to wipe out everything nearby. Even knowing the risk, Errol realizes he doesn't have a choice, not with that monster still standing. As he tries to finalize the fusion, he starts to feel the strain of juggling 6 volatile magic forces at once. Meanwhile, the slime inches closer, tentacles raised, and Maddie watches with a smug grin, fully expecting Errol to crash under the pressure. But just as things seem ready to fall apart, a blinding light flows into the circle. Errol glances back and sees all the students and teachers pouring their mana into him, lending their strength to keep the spell stable. And with their help, Errol finally pulls it off, and he fires the completed elimination spell and obliterates the black slime in a single earth-shaking blast. Maddie stares at the aftermath, absolutely stunned that the spell actually worked, and his entire worldview starts falling apart. Errol casually grabs him and reminds him of that arrogant trash he was talking earlier. Instantly, Maddie switches gears, laughing nervously and pretending he was just joking the whole time. After giving Maddie a quick reality check, Errol descends to the massive crater left behind by the blast. Though drained from using up all his mana, he's soon surrounded by the headmasters, all of whom instantly recognize that the elimination spell he just unleashed is a legendary technique, one that only a mage lord should be capable of using. Shocked, the teachers all start wondering how someone so young could possibly cast it. The yellow headmaster even points out that none of them fully understand how to become a mage lord themselves, but Errol calmly explains that he's classless and that he learned the technique directly from his father, who just happens to be a mage lord. That news stuns the group, and they start asking if he's related to the famous Lian. Errol nods, slightly surprised they even knew who his father was. The Red School headmaster steps forward and says that Lian was actually his old classmate, though he never beat him, always second best. Everyone assumed Lian would one day lead the school, but then he vanished without saying a word. The blue headmaster also remembers having a prodigy junior like Lian, who disappeared the same way. Errol explains that his dad actually studied at all the magic schools, but left them one by one after mastering everything they had to offer. The green headmaster then turns to Errol and asks if he actually knows the path to becoming a mage lord. Errol replies bluntly that they just need to push all 6 elements to their absolute limits. Hearing this, the teachers freeze because the city's magic system splits those 6 elements across separate schools, which means none of their students could ever hope to become a mage lord, even if they master one branch completely. As the truth sinks in, and they realize they still need the Forbidden Black School to reach true magical mastery, Errol vanishes before their eyes. A short distance away, he notices a tiny baby slime wiggling under the debris, somehow still alive after everything. While Maddie suggests wiping it out to avoid future trouble, Errol decides to keep it as a familiar instead. The following morning in his room, Errol manages to tame the little black slime and names it Wob Wob. As it rolls around sucking up trash like a living vacuum, Maddie glares at it in disbelief, annoyed that the thing has already turned into a loyal servant. He can't understand how Wob Wob could bond with Errol after taking such a beating, so Errol casually reminds him that slimes don't feel pain. So to Wob Wob, their whole fight probably felt like some kind of fun game, so it's got no problem sticking around as his familiar. Just then, Kato and the girls barge into the room, panicked that Errol might be leaving their city. Errol asks where they got that idea, and the kids say they heard it from their teachers, and they all start begging him to stay until graduation. But Errol tells them straight that there's nothing left for him to gain here. Seeing how ready he is to walk away, the kids feel like he's being cold, but he reassures them and promises that he'll swing by now and then to visit. When they ask what's next for him, he says he'll return home first, then he's heading to the monster capital. That stuns Kato, who asks why he'd ever go to the gathering point of all the world's monsters, so Errol explains that since his new familiar is a monster, it makes sense to visit the monster city. That's when the kids realize the little black blob he's holding is the very slime he fought. They recoil in fear, but Errol insists Wob Wob is not harmless. Colette points out that it looks like the same gluttony slime that nearly wrecked their city, but Errol just shrugs, joking that the color is just a coincidence. So after a moment, the kids relax and even start petting it. Elsewhere, chaos erupts in the school's central office as a government official yells at the headmasters for letting a prodigy like Errol walk away, but the teachers calmly respond, trying to stop him would ended with them getting flattened and him leaving anyway. At that moment, Blag suddenly reappears like a ghost, dropping a bombshell that there's still a way to produce another mage lord using the knowledge Errol left behind. The staff all freeze in shock as they watch him materialize out of nowhere. So Blag explains that while his body was destroyed by the slime, his soul still survived. And since he now understands that black magic is crucial to producing a mage lord, he offers to work together with the remaining headmasters, though they all quietly wonder if the city is really ready for someone like him sticking around. A little while later, Errol finally says his goodbyes to Kato and the girls and begins the journey home. And as he disappears into the distance, a mysterious woman watches silently from the shadows as he flies away. Then, while Errol was flying smoothly through the sky toward his hometown, Maddie suddenly turned to him and asked about his parents. Errol answered casually, saying they were just plain villagers, nothing worth mentioning. But Maddie chuckled, pointing out how impressive it must be for them, having a son born from classless parents who somehow went on to master both swordsmanship and magic. That's when Errol shot him a look and asked why exactly he assumed his parents were classless to begin with. Maddie blinked in confusion, thinking it was just common sense because if the kids got no class, then the parents must be the same. But Errol shut that down real quick and said that his mom's a certified sword saint, and his dad's a damn mage lord. That nearly knocks Maddie off balance as he asks how the hell they're considered normal villagers then, so Errol explained they'd hung up their gear ages ago and now live quietly out in the sticks, long retired from their old adventuring days. As they glide through the skies, Errol realizes the village is too far to reach before nightfall, so they'll have to make a stop somewhere or risk camping out in the woods. Luckily, they spot a village not too far off, sitting right along their path. It looks active and safe enough, so Errol decides they'll spend the night there and pick up the journey again tomorrow. By the time the sun sets, Errol's already booked a room for them. With everything squared away, he decides to unwind with a hot soak. The bath is calm, steamy, and peaceful, until the door creaks open and a girl steps in, wrapped in just a towel. Maddie tenses up immediately, ducking behind Errol like a scared puppy. But Errol stays relaxed, telling her it's a mixed bath anyway, so she's welcome to join. She thanks him politely, slides into the water with a relieved sigh, and then turns her attention to Errol. Maddie leans in, whispering that there's definitely something off about her, and they should be on alert. But he notices Errol's already onto her and isn't bothered at all. If anything, he's curious, maybe even excited, like he's waiting to see what kind of trick she might pull that he's never seen before. The girl casually asks what brings Errol on this journey, and without skipping a beat, he says he's chasing strength, pure and simple. That seems to catch her interest, so she follows up, asking if he enjoys fighting. But Errol calmly replies that it's not about winning or losing, he's just trying to see how far someone without a class can really go. The girl questions if he really is classless, and Errol confirms it without hesitation that he has no official skills, no assigned class, nothing. But that's never stopped him. She wonders if people mock him for it, and Errol shrugs, admitting they do, but he's long since learned to live with it, so it doesn't get under his skin anymore. Then he sits down to eat with Maddie and the slime, just like it's any other day. Then when Maddie brings up the kingdom and asks if Errol's really sure about skipping the chance to see it for himself, Errol tells him he needs to check in with his parents first, and only after that will he figure out what comes next. The following day, just as Errol steps out of the inn and heads off, the same girl from last night suddenly blocks his path again. This time, she introduces herself properly as Princess Kura of the kingdom. She tells him straight up that he's been ordered to come with her by command of Her Majesty the Queen, but Errol just brushes it off, saying he doesn't give a damn about her queen and has no intention of tagging along. He even questions why a queen from a completely unrelated kingdom would have any interest in him. Kura lowers her gaze and admits she doesn't actually know what the queen wants either, only that she's been searching for a classless man named Errol for quite some time, so it must be important. Errol stays unimpressed, saying it doesn't change anything because he still has no reason to go. Kuruha insists that the queen's a divine being and means no harm, but Errol scoffs, telling her he's not even worried about getting hurt, though honestly he doubts the queen could even touch him. Finally running out of polite options, Kuruha disappears in a blink and reappears behind Errol, trying to knock him out cold, but Errol's faster. He slips out of the way with ease, catching her totally off guard. She's stunned, and that's when Errol calmly warns her that if she's looking for a fight, he's not about to pull his punches. He proves it instantly by slamming a kick straight into her ovaries, dropping her flat. While she's curled up on the ground, Errol senses that there are at least 10 people hidden in the trees nearby, so he calls them out, telling them to quit hiding because he already knows they're there. Then a group of ninjas flickers into view surrounding him, and one of them demands to know how the hell he spotted them when they were cloaked with elite stealth techniques. Errol simply replies that stealth might muffle their presence, but it doesn't make them invisible, so he can still vibe check them without breaking a sweat. The ninja leader rushes over to Kuruha, panicking as she checks on her, and whining about how she's now covered in dirt. Kuruha brushes her off in frustration, telling her to quit fussing and focus on the mission, and reminds them not to treat Errol like just another classless nobody. All of them then charge in at once, trying to bring him down together, but it's completely pointless. Errol dismantles the entire squad with ease, barely putting in any effort. Soon, with the group sprawled unconscious across the ground, a new unit arrives to provide reinforcements from the same kingdom. They're stunned to see their elite squad wiped out and immediately demand to know what the hell happened. Thinking it must have been an ambush, they brace for a report, but the ninja leader weakly answers that Errol is the one responsible. The newcomers are floored by how the hell could one guy, and a classless guy at that, take out such a high-level force all by himself. But before they can wrap their heads around it, Errol casually steps out from behind a tree, munching on a rice ball, and asks if they're also part of the same kingdom. The woman with the dragon senses something serious behind his easygoing look. Then she introduces herself as Princess Dora, the Dragon Lord, and firmly tells Errol to surrender and come with them to meet the queen. But the beast girl Turga immediately pushes back, arguing that since she was here first, she deserves the right to capture him. Errol sighs and tells them not to waste time bickering. Instead, he offers a challenge. They can all come at him together, but only if they give it everything they've got, no holding back. The girls agree and launch their most powerful techniques and spells his way, but once the dust settles, the result is the same. Both the Beast Folk unit and the Dragon Princess are knocked out cold. Errol stands there looking slightly disappointed. Not one of them managed to show him anything remotely exciting. Still, something's bugging him now, as to why the hell is this kingdom going so far just to get him. That's when Kuriha, barely conscious, opens her eyes and mutters that their queen, the divine ruler, is the strongest being alive, and if Errol dares face her, he won't stand a chance. That only sparks Errol's curiosity even more, wondering what kinds of powers or techniques he might get to witness if he goes. With that, he changes his mind and decides to pay the kingdom a visit and meet this queen for himself. He flies straight to the castle, finding the gates wide open, but as he crosses the drawbridge, 4 women step in to surround him, each one claiming to be one of the 8 imperial generals. Just like Kuriha and the Dragon Woman, they each flaunt their own unique powers and demand that Errol surrender, but unsurprisingly, they're no match for him, and he takes them down without even breaking a sweat before making his way toward the throne room. There, the last of the 8 generals, Ernella, blocks his path, stunned that he got through 4 of her comrades so effortlessly. But before she can even draw her blade, a small figure darts past her and throws herself into Errol's arms. It's the queen, and to his shock, it turns out to be his older sister, who clings to him like she's been waiting for this moment forever, and he has a hard time prying her off. Ernella stands frozen, trying to make sense of the whole scene, while Errol demands to know what the hell his sister is doing pretending to be some kind of empress. She answers calmly, saying she made a vow long ago to build a place where no one would ever look down on him, just because he didn't have a class. And now, after all this time, she's finally made it happen. She tells him that from now on, he'll live here with her. In fact, she's already called for their parents and younger sister to come join them so they can all live together, free of judgment, in a peaceful and beautiful world. Astaire had expected Errol to be touched, maybe even moved enough to hug her back, but instead, he shakes his head and tells her he can't accept that. He explains that being classless doesn't limit him, it frees him. He has no fixed path, no assigned fate, and that gives him the chance to grow however he wants. He likes putting in the effort, learning on his own, and becoming stronger through experience. Astaire, a little taken aback, finally sighs and admits that in the end, Errol's a grown man now, and he can do whatever the hell he desires. With everything said, Errol gives her a nod of thanks and turns to leave, but Astaire isn't done yet. She activates her secret trump card, a ridiculously broken ability called Heaven's Will, a spell that lets her take control of someone else's actions. In an instant, Errol's body stops moving. He feels it, his limbs locked up, his body turning back against his will to face her again. Astaire then decides to go full unhinged and blurts out that she wants to live like a family from Alabama, then orders Errol to marry her on the spot. Her generals are frozen in shock as Astaire shamelessly charges toward him for a kiss, but Errol straight up kicks her in the face, telling her to get the hell off him. Astaire blinks in confusion because her spell is supposed to be absolute, but Errol's no idiot because he had already cast a wind barrier around his ears, using it like magical noise-canceling headphones to block out her command entirely. Finally accepting that she's been outplayed, Astaire backs off, and Errol leaves the palace, promising he'll come back for a visit sometime. By midday, he's back home, and his mom instantly pulls him into a hug, relieved that he's safe, while his younger sister Mira jumps into his arms too, thrilled that Errol's returned, and brought a demon and a slime with him. At night, Reiner sneaks into his room, clearly hoping for something that will make her sweat, but Errol just sits down and starts talking. They chat about everything that's happened, and Errol walks her through what he saw in the City of Magic. The two of them talk for hours, and Reiner finds herself wishing he'd finally stay home for real so they could have more nights like this. But the next morning, Mira runs into the room yelling that Errol's gone and left another note. This time, he's heading to the Demon City. Rainer just smiles, knowing full well there's no chaining him down. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Errol flies alongside Maddie, excited to see what new kinds of power and knowledge await in the next city ahead. But this is where the season 1 has ended. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next anime. And remember to like and subscribe to the channel to make me continue.